I'd like to call this September 17th, 2020 regular board meeting of the Strongsville City School District Board of Education to order. Mr. Anagnastu, would you take the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Salih?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
All present, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is our district goals. Our district goals remain academic achievement and growth, financial prudence and community engagement, and it goes without saying once again that all of those are being challenged, but we will do our best to respond to that challenge. Next on our agenda is public comment. I have 3 tonight. Scott Storm. I don't think you've been here before, so the protocol is your name and your address. You have 3 minutes. We're kind of lenient on that, but it won't be 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have my remarks typed out, so just 1 page.
Perfect. Go for it.
Great. Thank you, and a good evening to the Board of Education. Good evening to our superintendent, our secretary, who's sit before me this evening. First and foremost, I am a grateful citizen of the city of Strongsville. Your efforts and the efforts of your families, the sacrifice that only you know that happens on your end, is something that no one else will ever know and no one else will ever understand. And that is something that as citizens of our country we show respect and gratefulness for your willingness to serve our community. So thank you very much. As Mr. President stated, my name is Scott Storm. I'm the one who organized the Facebook group, Strongsville Parents for Remote Learning 2.0, just to see if anyone shared my concerns about having Remote 2.0 replaced with an inferior learning platform that removes teachers and weakens the educational experience of students not returning to the school because of COVID-19. Not knowing what to expect, I quickly realized that a lot of people agreed and felt like they were being brushed aside and not heard. So I created a petition to formally bring our voices together to the Board of Education, to Dr. Reiba, to help us drive the changes that remote learning students need. This afternoon, the petition passed 428 signatures, and I wonder how many more would sign it if they knew about it. How many agree but are afraid to put their name on it? Excuse me. The petition asks for you to continue quality remote learning during this pandemic that will provide remote students the same opportunity of academic excellence as their classmates returning to school. The value of live instruction from an educator to facilitate the learning process is irreplaceable. Whether in school or at home, all students in our schools are depending on you to provide this. Having a Strongsville teacher to engage with live instruction is what 80% of our school budgeted tax money pays for. All students need to have a teacher, a live teacher, instructing them every day for at least 30 minutes in all the core areas. Encore and elective classes also need to be made available. For K-5 students, the board has essentially brought back tic-tac-toe boards in Google with only 30 minutes live with a teacher, and that amount of time just simply is not feasible to provide the breadth of teaching necessary to cover the daily core curriculum. A library of videos cannot substitute the value of live instruction. Students in grades 6 through 12 who opted to remain at home were not given an option to be taught by Strongsville teachers remotely. We stand willing and ready to work with the Board of Education and the superintendent to ensure all students are provided with an educator. We must exhaust every possible option before we ever deny any student teachers to teach them at minimum the core curriculum. None of us chose this pandemic, and none of us are here to blame for the war we are waging on COVID-19. None of us, including me, have been perfect in the middle of all this. We are all trying to do our best. We must unite and work together to do whatever it takes to live up to our district goals and provide academic excellence for all students. Where there is a will, there is a way. And we are willing to find that together. We do not believe that a student who chooses to go remote should be even provided the option to come into the building, as it is counterintuitive to the logic of them staying home. That just isn't an option. The option to just not take the course is also not an option. And the option to teach yourself is counterintuitive to having a public institution to teach you. Excuse me. We request that the following be included in the minutes from this meeting, please. We request the board to provide better transparency to the public. This includes all previous, current, and future survey results be made to the public. We request that when survey closes, the results be posted immediately on a public dashboard. We request that community conversations show live all questions that have been submitted in order to make it a transparent conversation and to know that your question was registered. Some people still don't know that. We make a public record request for the treasurer to provide the initial 2020 cash balance, current cash balance, and all cash flows of income received and expenditures made so far during 2020. We request time for the audience comments and participation to be added to the agenda, please, in the regular scheduled board meeting on October 1st to follow up on the progress we have made. We cannot wait until the end of the trimester. You will leave these students at home behind. Trust seems to be minimal at best with most people that I have talked to about this issue. There are over 428 people who have low trust right now. Thus, the request for better transparency. I'm not saying that the board has not tried to be transparent, that things have not been repeated, and they have been, but the issues and the items that I've requested will help open up and facilitate breathing and dialogue for everybody. We had a teacher who came with COVID last Thursday, and it was a crucial time for the citizens of this community to know that without the children in the building, someone got the virus without even the children being there, in their own rooms, by themselves, with masks on. People are trying to decide, what do I want to do? And that merited a phone call for people trying to make that decision. It didn't merit a dashboard. There are many, many people who feel that way, but they're scared to come and speak. You can see by the room tonight, half the chairs are still empty. On the Facebook page I created, I invited people to speak to you. I provided your email address, your phone numbers, and I hope they've reached out to you. I've reached out to half the board over the phone. I appreciate your time and your concern in listening to me. Thank you very much. In closing, this is an opportunity for the board to rebuild trust, to actively partner and communicate with your parents and residents, to strengthen school community bonds by providing teachers for high-quality educational experiences. Not having teachers for some students does not maintain a high-quality educational experience for all students. There is no time to waste by taking an incremental improvement approach. The summer has come and gone, and we need teachers ready now to teach remote classes as soon as possible. We have faith in you that you will deliver on the district goals and make this right as soon as humanly possible. We are acting to protect the integrity of our children's health, and we urge you to protect the integrity of their academic experience. Please, provide Strongsville teachers to facilitate live instruction every day for at least 30 minutes in all the course subjects with appropriate availability of encore and elective classes. Thank you for your time this evening. I am providing the board a copy of the petition as well as my remarks this evening. I assume I'll give them to the secretary. Is that correct?
She's not the secretary.
Sorry. Don, sorry. My mistake.
It's okay.
I apologize. My sincere apologies. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and may God bless us all, please.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate your comments. Diana?
You didn't say grandma.
You corrected me.
Well, sometimes I don't like to feel like a grandma. Now's one of those times. I do love my grandchildren. They're wonderful. I would like to first thank the board members who returned my phone calls and spoke with me over the phone. I'm sorry I had a phone call for Michelle, and I didn't get to that. I could not find the phone numbers for the other two board members online on the district webpage, or I would have tried to contact all of you. I just feel this is very important, and I appreciate the president and the vice president getting back to me. And we had a wonderful conversation, and I appreciated the dialogue that we had. Sometimes that's the best way, is to have a one-on-one. But I do have a few words I'd like to share with everyone this evening. This is not in any way intended to attack or demean anybody, just my thoughts, my feelings, so kind of bear with me as I run through them. Most of the parents who have joined Remote 2.0 or who have signed petitions, or those who are afraid.
Diana, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second.
Sure.
Name and address
Oh,
for the record.
I am sorry, I did miss that.
No worries.
I missed it too, sorry.
No, well,
Okay, we'll let it go.
I was listening intently to your comments.
Sorry. Thank you. Just want to make sure I didn't even get in there.
Diana Storm, 17775 Saratoga Trail, Strongsville. We've lived here since 2009. I absolutely love it, if I can add that. Where was I? I bet none of you know, right? Remote 2.0, most of the parents who have joined Remote 2.0 or who have signed the petition, or those who are afraid to sign the petition or to join 2.0 are volunteers in our schools. They make the decision to help in the classroom, and these people make the decision to help in our buildings. They choose to be helpful at levy time. Many choose to take vacation time to volunteer for the schools. When you need them, they're there. Now, they need you to be there for them. They need you to choose and decide decisions that are going to affect their children's academic school year. This virus isn't going to go away anytime soon. To help maintain the high-quality educational experiences for all students, they need you to decide to choose for the best educational opportunities for all children, not just part of them, but for all. Remote Learning 2 was working. They had a teacher during the day. That was taken away from them. The educational option was 1, go to school with a teacher, or 2, solo, stay home and do paperwork on your own. I don't know how that ever got to be an option. Then it was changed to solo 2, 30 minutes a day of teacher time if you stayed home. Not academic, educational teaching time, just 30 minutes of time with a teacher on your computer. The students have 4 core subjects they will teach themselves by doing worksheets. They can choose a video. The parents are to be their teacher, or the grandparents, or the babysitter. Maybe we should ask ourselves, why don't the students who go to school have their parents, grandchildren, or babysitter go to school and be their teacher? It's just not the way it's meant to be. Children need a teacher. That's why it's so important to have that teacher contact with those children every day in their core subjects. Parents aren't trained for that. Babysitters aren't trained for that. Grandparents aren't trained for that. They need that. And we would like to see that take place. All righty, what is occurring with Solo 2 hardly compares to the option given to those going to school. Teachers, art, music, gym, etc. The students who opt out of school deserve to benefit, like the students who opt into school. How? By the alignment of district resources to district initiatives and investments. You need to invest in all students. All students deserve to benefit by the district resources, not just the ones who opt to go into the buildings. With this pandemic, we are all in very different circumstances. And why parents opt to send their children into the buildings for learning at this time, or why parents opt to have them learning remotely, is not an issue. Why? Because it's irrelevant why the parents are doing what they're doing. That's not for us to judge. We need to see to it, all of us, that their education is number one. Dr. Fauci has said it's going to be till probably the end of March if they have a vaccine. It's going to go on the whole school year. Are these kids really going to learn this way all year? I shudder to think that would happen. All students deserve a high-quality educational experience. All deserve a teacher teaching them the 4 core subjects. And by the way, music, art, and gym are a part of remote too, and should be a part of learning remotely as it is now. If it is important for students to learn at school, it's equally important for the students to learn during school time remotely. A simple petition was created online sharing concerns, and much to my surprise, over 400 people have signed the petition. How many more may have signed it, except they feel intimidated, they're afraid. Just why a lot of people don't come this evening. People get intimidated, they get afraid, they get nervous. Not that I'm not, but it needs to be said. You need to hear what these silent people are saying. You have to know something's wrong if that number of people become involved in something that was just posted online. I don't go online looking for petitions to sign. I'm sure you don't either. If there are options for the students to learn in person at school or remotely at another location, learning is the key word. I believe the school district goals stated it this way. Goal number 1, engage learners in rigorous curriculum and quality instruction that will maximize the achievement and growth across all academic areas. Wow, that packs a punch. Goal number 2, ensure sound financial management practices while maintaining high-quality educational experiences for all students. That's the district's goals. Can't we find a way to meet those goals for all students? Isn't that important? It sounds like it when I read the district goals. And I know these are the 2019-2020 district goals, but you should still believe it. I think that's something that you believe, and that's something that carries over. And goal number 3 was community engagement. This is why we're here tonight, to actively partner and communicate with, well, for you it says, with our parents and residents to strengthen the school community bonds. But that's why Scott and I are here. And I don't know if there's anyone else here or not. That's up to them. But we are here to partner with you for the academic excellence and to maintain it in Strongsville. And if these children are left at home on their own devices without teachers interacting with them in their core, they're going to lose ground if this goes on for the whole school year. I mean, I hate to even see it start. I really do. Remote learning, as it's doing right now, is working great. And I say to you that neither Solo nor Solo 2 meet the district goals, and ask that you reevaluate what is happening. You have the right, duty, and obligation to make changes to meet those goals. Please figure out how to reallocate the teachers to continue with remote 2 and have the in-school option. Other schools are doing it. I believe we can also. You know, busing is beyond state minimum. We have a lot of sports. We do a lot of extra, what can be called fluffy things. If you look at the school, your nucleus is the students and the teacher. That education is at the center of everything. That's the reason the schools exist. And to support that academic educational learning that goes on between the teacher and the student, you have the busing, and you bus the extra mile. You have the extracurriculars, you provide food service, you clean the buildings. That's great. We need all that. But the most important thing, and we can't forget it, is what happens with those students and that teacher. That will affect them a lifetime. And what's happening this year with this COVID can especially impact their life for a lifetime. And I would just like to close by just saying how much I do appreciate you as board members and the administration, staff. You work hard. I think our teachers and our police officers and our firemen have been wronged so much. And I just shudder to think what kind of society we're going to become. Respect is paramount. And I respect the teachers and I respect the staff. I love going to Whitney. I love the principal, his staff. Oh my gosh, the music teacher. You go in that building and you feel like you're at home. You see what's on the walls. You see the smiles and the warmth that comes to you from the staff. We have got it together here in Strongsville. Don't let something like this destroy that. And I thank you very much for your time. You've got my name. You have my phone number. Give me a call if I can answer any questions or help in any way.
Thank you very much. Jess Koza?
You'll have to forgive me, I have to remove my mask, it hurts. I had a little bit of an incident involving a toddler to the face. I'm Jess Koza. I live at 9812 Hazelwood Avenue. I am back here tonight to talk about a particularly important topic, and that topic is diversity. In my 8 years here in Strongsville, I have met a variety of people from all walks of life. The problem is there is no knowledge of this. I know we formed a diversity council, but I'm entirely not sure I understand the point of it, even so more now, between the pandemic and other events going on around us. We seem to live in this bubble that these issues do not exist. I am disappointed in how all of this is being handled, and I feel no one is listening to each other. A specific group of students seems to always be overlooked when anything goes on. I am talking about our most vulnerable. This just does not only fall on our district, it's the entire community, and I know we have people in the public that listen to these meetings. I know I am not alone when I say I am tired of the divisiveness. I am tired of no one listening to each other and being very disrespectful. And I'm probably going to be hated for my next comment. All lives do not matter. It never has. And I see it more in the pandemic when people talk about our sick and our immunocompromised. You say you always want to have good relationships with everyone, and I believe it can be achieved. Just based off this letter I received from somebody in the community who heard me the last time I was up here. I thought it was very nice. You don't get handwritten letters anymore. And the handwriting was very beautiful. Thank you, Shirley. There is no empathy for our neighbors anymore. We have been so quick to dismiss each other. Everything is short and given with an automatic no, when I do not believe the options given to our most vulnerable are appropriate options. Where is the venue for best practices on how to educate these kids without using so much public opinion and personal bias? What happened to the idea of small groups of students being able to come in? Where is the data that proves why Remote Learning 2.0 couldn't continue? You're asking me why I'm up here again. Understand something, and I just want to be clear, these aren't complaints. These are concerns. You ask me every time there's a PTA meeting or a Continue the Excellence meeting, what I can do to help. What is going on in the community? What's everybody chattering about? What can we do? And what I've been doing is I've been listening to all the different perspectives from where everybody's coming from. People that want in person, people that want to be home, people who have different circumstances. The least you can do is start addressing them. I'm going to ask you one more time to carefully look at what you're doing, because once again, you're not looking at everything through a true, diverse lens. That's it.
I'm going to comment that we've always felt that public comment is primarily an opportunity for the public to talk to us. It is not necessarily a dialogue thing, but there were a few requests that I'm going to comment, and if anyone else has comments, that's fine. You made some public records requests. Those are legal requests. George knows them intimately and is committed, as we all are, to fulfilling those requests. So we will get that. We will get that information to you. I appreciate everyone here. I appreciate everyone's opinions. As far as other people not showing up in force, I look at public comment kind of as a steam whistle. And it lets us know when, two people are coming, who's behind that door. What I will share with you is we all have these similar conversations, and I understand the frustration, and I understand the wanting to do better. And if any of this was as simple as playing chess, I am confident we all would have done that. It is not as simple as playing chess. And I don't mean that as a rebuke or what have you, but we are all, as a team, working for the same goals. We are all working to educate the students of Strongsville as well as we can, balancing financial prudence with academic excellence. We may disagree on the lanes. I'm confident we disagree on the lanes. But what I do want to say publicly is this is not a stopping point. This is a starting point. Our former high school principal, his mantra was GB, I gotta make sure I spell it right, GBED, get better every day. So I appreciate that. I try to be very practical. We have to start somewhere, and we can always get better. As far as I respect your conclusions as far as solo 2 or what have you. I don't know. I mean, it's not as clean as it's defined. We had that independent option. The real world intruded, and we had to come up with another plan. At that point in time, we said, how can we come up with another plan and address requests, address concerns? Is a half an hour perfect? No, but it's a starting point and it's a minimum commitment. And over time, we will continue to get better, and over time, we will improve. I don't want that misinterpreted. That doesn't mean we're saying that we're going to do X, Y, or Z or respond to any requests. What it does mean is as we can continue to get better, we will do that. And if we can problem solve, is Dr. Ryba's phrase, however you want to say that, if we can figure that out, we will. The parent's perspective is to advocate for their children. The board's perspective is to advocate for the entire district. And one of the things that I know I work on is making sure we're reasonable in our requests of everyone. And we are asking a lot of our teachers and of our employees and our staff. And I want to make sure we do what we can well instead of trying to do everything poorly. And that's one of the things that we are trying to balance. And I've said before, we are in a situation where it is very difficult to balance everything. You're very passionate, everyone's very passionate. We've had, the board and the administration has had just as many people who have been passionate about getting our kids back to school. We will find a balance, we will get better every day, and I know that you said we will work together, and I know we will. That's all I need to say. Any board members have any questions or comments? Dr. Ryba? Next on our agenda is recognition. Do we have any recognition?
No recognitions tonight.
Approval of minutes. We have the August 6th and August 20th regular Board of Education meeting. All district video and audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes. They're all available on our website. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Mr. Anagnostou.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Solis,
Yes.
and Mr. Miko.
Yes, and the motion carries. And George, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. Before I get into my treasurer's report, or the items under my treasurer's report, want to, so a couple board meetings ago, I announced to the public and we sent out communication where we refunded our debt. Stifel, our financial advisor, had brought a little gift to kind of commemorate the occasion. So it's, they wanted me to present this to the board and to the community, just a commemorative of the refunding. So the total refunding, so it's a check made out to the taxpayers of Strongsville City Schools. So the total savings of the debt was $19,862,000. The net present value of that is down here, which is $14,524,000. That's what we think we're going to spend, or think we're going to save. Not think, know we're going to save throughout the lifetime of 26 years. The amount that we refunded or refinanced is $53,340,000. And then the number here, the check number, represents the percentage of the total savings of 24.69% of $19 million that we saved. And the September 10th date, that's when we officially closed on the sale of the bonds. So I just wanted to share this with the community and the public, and work with Dan. We'll find a spot to keep this somewhere here in the building.
I think you should fold it and put it in your wallet and take it to the bank.
I could only catch it. Okay, now as I get into my items under the agenda, the first item is the financial report for the month ending August 31st, which could be found in Exhibit B. Also, based on Mr. Storm's public comment, or public records request, these are on our website. The August will be on our website. Once the board approves it tonight, I'll have it on there tomorrow. And within the exhibit, it does show the monthly and year-to-date revenues and expenditures coming in and out. And if you didn't see it, on the door outside of the gym over here, there's a copy too, if you want to take a copy for yourself. Thank you. Yep. The next item is item B, which is the fiscal year 21 permanent appropriations. I do have a presentation for that. So if you recall back to June, we began the school year with a temporary budget, and the board must adopt an annual budget by September 30th. In the past, we had the board approve the 5-year forecast at the same time with the budget, which was due in October to the state. But due to legislation that changed the 5-year forecast submission date to November, I'll present a budget tonight that ties to, I'll present a forecast that ties to the budget so we see how much cash we have that we can afford our expenditures. now, and then we'll do an updated forecast in November and have the forecast adopted in November, and I'll submit it to the Ohio Department of Education in November. The estimated resources, this is for all funds. We have several different fund types. Our main operating fund is the general fund, and we're estimating revenues of $81 million for $81,457,000 for this school year, with an unencumbered beginning balance of $39.7 million, leaving a total estimated resource of $121 million that we have available within the general fund. And then our other fund types, we have our special revenue funds, which consist of our 018, which are our principals, fundraising accounts, our 300, which is our district managed student activity, the 400, which is the 401, which is the auxiliary service. And then to get in the series of them, the 400s are state funds, the 500 funds are federal funds. The auxiliary service is the pass-through money that goes to St. Joseph and John's from the state. As you'll see in the 500 series, we did get 2 new grants this year. The CARES Act Esser Fund of $407,000 and the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And then we also have our Debt Retirement Fund, our Capital Projects Funds, Enterprise Funds such as our Food Service and School Supplies Fund, and then a few Internal Revenue Service funds for, the main one is our employee self-insurance benefits, and then 2 fiduciary funds, which is the main one is the student managed student activity funds. So that's the revenues. In total, the revenues are estimated at $107 million for this school year. On the next slide is our annual appropriation for the general fund. Our annual appropriation is $77.4 million, with carryover encumbrances of $1.9 million, for a total appropriation of $79.3 million. And then for all funds, the total appropriation is $104.7 million, plus carryover encumbrances of about $3 million, for a total appropriation of $107.7 million. And then how does that break down per pupil for the general fund? I broke it down to our main categories, and then also put some subcategories. So for our main category is instruction. For example, regular instruction, of the total $77 million, $30.6 million for regular instruction, or 39.51% of the budget. Special education, about $13.1 million, or 17%, and so on. So for in total instruction, it represents 57.65 of the per pupil, or 7,933 of the total per pupil cost of $13,762. So the total per pupil budget this year is that $13,762, and how it compares to last year, it's up by $400 per pupil. Last year was $13,362, the budgeted amount. So now going into the forecast. So when I do the budget, I do the forecast simultaneously. It's the same process. So to kind of look at the budgets, to look at the forecast, the way I look at it is what resources do we have, and can we spend it, and how long are those, and is it sustainable over the period of time, especially during the life of the forecast. The major assumptions of the forecast are the forecast consists of the major assumptions: the general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and the 5-year forecast summary. Moving into the major assumptions, our property tax collection rate. I haven't not made any adjustments since the spring forecast for the collection rate. We received 2 advances so far. With the advances that we received, it's still early to gauge on what our fall taxes are going to be. The settlement will be given to us by the county on September 30th, so we'll have a better idea then. When I say it's tough to gauge, we received our advance August 15th, but they used the data that they provided the advance with was as of August 7th, and tax bills weren't due until August 13th. So there was still some time, and also I think there was a lag in their processing. So comparative apples to apples from last year, based on the advances, it was up by a few $1 million, but that's given since we had a new levy since then too. So we'll see what happens September 30th for the first half advance. The forecast does assume a 3.5% decrease in the gross collection rate for the second half of this calendar year, and then we'll increase it for calendar year 21 by 1%, so it would still be a decrease of 2.5%. And then the forecast assumes the collection rate will normalize in fiscal year, or in calendar year 22, but would also increase slightly to make up for the delinquencies that we estimated for the past 2 calendar years.
I'm assuming that is part of the explanation for above 100%.
Correct. And then with tax collections, it's based on our assessed valuation. The chart shows the actual previous assessed valuations and the forecasted adjustments that I have in the out years. And then with property taxes, so we have 2 renewal levies. The first renewal levy, which was that was recently approved in 2016, was a 5-year, $6 million levy that started in January 2018. The levy will expire December 31st, 2021, and collections will continue through December 31st, 2022. And the first time we can go on the ballot for this renewal is next November. So November of 2021 is our first attempt that we can go on the ballot to renew this. And in order for it to continue, it would need to be renewed by November of 2022. And then in May 2019, the residents approved a 5-year, 5.9 renewal levy with collections beginning of January 2020, and the levy will expire in December 31st of 2023, but collections will continue through 2024, and the first time we can go on the ballot for that is November of 2023. Continuing with the assumption for revenues, state funding. So for state funding, the 2019 per pupil and foundation revenue amount is the base aid amount used in the fiscal year 20 and beyond. Additionally, the forecast assumes a 5% reduction to the state funding guarantee in 2022-23 biennium, and another 5% reduction in the state funding guarantee in the 2024-25 biennium. So the key thing here with 22-23 biennium, that's the biennium that's coming up in July, this upcoming July, that the state's going to have to approve. With a change in the House, with this biennium budget, it'd be something to keep an eye on now that Mr. Cupp is the Speaker of the House. The potential Cupp-Patterson funding proposal that was proposed during the last biennium could get some steam, so that if that were to go through, it significantly changes the funding formula as it is now. So it's just something to keep our eye on as this biennium starts to unfold after the first of the year. And then to update our spring assumptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, for 2020, the district experienced a 10% reduction in state funding due to COVID-19. Originally, it was about a 17% reduction, about $1.7 million, and then through the advocacy of Senator Dolan, $600,000 was added back, so our total decrease was about $1 million. So the state has already communicated that same level of funding is going to continue for 2021. It could change, but the latest communication we have is that that's going to continue. So that's where 2021 aid is at. Compare the numbers, it's about a 9% reduction. So for 2022, I restored 50% of that, so equals about a 5% reduction. And then 2023, I completely restored the COVID reduction, but also reduced based on the 5% reduction of the guarantee. And the other change from the spring forecast until now, in the spring forecast, I didn't assume any dollars for casino revenue because the casinos were closed at the time and there was no indication when they were going to open. Last year we got about $295,000 on an annual basis. So this year I estimated about $206,000. Where I came up with those numbers is the per pupil amount, it was about $51. I reduced it by 25% to $39, and the 25% came from the casinos were closed for 3 months. And then once they opened in July, their July data for numbers was actually higher from last July. So they kind of hit, based on the data, the revenues are, in some aspects, where they were last year. We'll have to see how that continues through the fall. Personnel trends, staffing-wise, at all funds, we're up about with all the changes, we're up about 729, not up, we have 2 positions to 729 total budgeted positions. How that breaks down, of that 729, 352 are teachers, about 48% of the staffing. And then teacher aides are 118 positions, administrative 26 positions, clerical 40, custodial maintenance 58, transportation about 65 positions. So you can see the breakdown in the chart. So our biggest chunk, of course, is the teachers and the aides that make up well over 50% of our staffing. And how that impacts how reflects that general fund. Of those total 729, 669 positions are out of the general fund, up 2 budgeted positions from last year. And then next year, anticipating to increase by 3%, and all that three positions, and those 3 positions are not new positions. It's a shift from our literacy grant, or literacy coaches that were on the literacy grant, which is ending after this school year, moving to the general fund. The forecast assumes all union agreements as currently defined. Healthcare was flat in fiscal year 20, but for 21, we saw a 3% increase. And then in 22 to 25, we're projecting an annual increase of 8%. Unemployment costs are forecasted to increase 90,000 due to the pandemic for fiscal year 21. For 22 to 25, the forecast assumes unemployment will return for current levels. And where we're at for unemployment is we're through the invoices are in lag, but our most recent invoice was for June. And from March to June, we've been averaging about $15,000 a month. And then expenditures related to the COVID-19 pandemic. These are the following budget adjustments I made to the forecast and to the budget based on the pandemic and what we know now. As I have just kind of jumping to the last bullet point, due to the present times of the pandemic, we'll need to monitor the following areas for fluctuations: sub-costs, solo costs, remote 2.0, and PPP supplies. But it's just, we're going to need to monitor most of our expenses because things could change based on a day-to-day basis. But to go back to the top of the bullet point, so the budget adjustments that were made were added $125,000 of salary for supplemental salary for remote 2.0 as a placeholder. For purchase services, we added $550,000 for the Strongsville online learning option. The total estimated cost is about $750,000, and that's our estimate right now. It could fluctuate. We're utilizing $100,000 that was already in our budget for the Strongsville Learning Academy, and then also $100,000 from our CARES funding to make up the difference. For fiscal year 22, I estimated a 50% decrease of the cost at $275,000, completely phased it out in fiscal year 23. For PPE supplies and equipment, I increased the operations budget by $250,000, and for now, I have that in there for the life of the forecast. How I came up with that number is I looked at the dollars that they spent so far for COVID. That's not on the grant. We've spent about $85,000 just year to date, this fiscal year, almost a quarter into the year. So kind of looking at a supplies budget now and kind of estimating for the rest of the year is kind of came up with that estimate. Custodial costs, we increased the budget by 31 hours. Again, that's to the life of the forecast. Athletics, under our transfer of funds, I increased the general fund transfers out by $100,000 for transfer athletics due to estimated ticket loss revenue. Just something we need to keep an eye on based on his budget's still the same. We didn't increase his budget, so it's just basic. His budget's about $150,000. We usually get about that in ticket sales too, with other revenue that comes in. So just put $100,000 there as a placeholder, as a transfer. And then, as I stated earlier, we'll need to do these unprecedented times, continue to monitor our costs. For subs, the Solo, Remote 2.0, PPE supplies, and another one also is the food service transfer as well. Additional grant funding that we received, the forecast is just the general fund, but I did want to touch base on the grants. I kind of mentioned it during the appropriation, but we did receive specific grants for the pandemic. The first one we received was the Esser CARES Act funding. We received about $407,000, and so far that's being utilized for kindergarten Chromebooks, Chromebook cases in grades 3 to 5, the $100,000 for Solo, hardware and software for remote learning instruction, and PPE equipment. We received $285,000 under the coronavirus relief funding. Those are utilized for middle school Chromebooks, elementary and middle school desks to replace tables to allow for social distancing, and disinfection sprayers. The one thing I want to add about these two grants is the first one, the CARES Act, has to be spent by June 30th of 2021. The coronavirus relief funding must be spent by December 31st, 2020, so this December coming up. And then the next one, the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant for $21,205, and that's going to be utilized for public Wi-Fi and also putting Wi-Fi on buses. And that grant needs to be spent by December 30th as well. And then the last one was applied by our high school librarian, our media specialist. It's a Library Services Technology Act CARES mini grant for $3,000, which will be utilized for PPE supplies in the high school library. And that has a shelf life of June 30th. Moving on into the revenues, where our money comes from. Majority of our revenue, about 74%, comes from the community, which is about 60 million. Then the next biggest chunk is our state foundation at 10.7%. Our state of Ohio reimbursements at 7.8. Our TIF revenue is about 4.9 of the total, and all other, which is our tuitions for preschool, kindergarten, outside tuition, interest revenue, catastrophic cost reimbursements, Medicaid, make up the other category. And in total, our total revenues, as I mentioned earlier, is about $81.5 million. The next slides, for property taxes, we're seeing just want to see one thing. Sorry, I just realized that the graphic for fiscal year 2022 is not correct. For 2021, we're seeing about a $57.3 million estimate in revenues. Last year's revenues are about, I apologize, this slide, they're all a year off. So the 2022 is the 60 million, or is the 21 amount, the 2021 is the 20 amount, and the 19 is the 2022 amount, or the 2020 amount. So 2021 is the 60 million, 2020, the 57.3 is last year's. So let me start over with this one. The 60 million is 2021. The 57.3 is 2020. So a slight increase from last year to this year, and the difference is the second half of the levy coming on also netted against the decrease in collections that we had estimated. So I'll update this slide and get it back out to everyone. Yeah.
So, the 61.5 million, the 3.7 is the half year of the levy coming out,
Correct.
and then that goes to 7.3 million in 2023.
So the first year, I think it's just thrown off. So I have the statement, and look at the statement that I have in front of you. The first year, I think the blue numbers are a year off, the red numbers are correct. In 2023, it's the first year of the levy coming off. In 2024, it's the second year of the levy coming off. And then in 2025, it's both levies coming off. It's the full levy of the first one and the first half of the second one. I apologize for that. State foundation revenue, we received 8.5 million last year, estimating the same for this year. 2021 at 8.5, 2022, 8.6. Although it's flat, there's two differences. One is the, assuming half of the COVID reduction coming off, and then it's the first year of the biennium with the 5% reduction. And then in 2023, it's the second year of the biennium with a 5% reduction, but also half the remaining COVID reduction coming off in total. That's why it went up. And then in 2024, coming back down based on the second biennium. So 2024 and 2025 are the second biennium, which have an additional 5% decrease in the guarantee. And our casino revenues for this year, 206,000. I kept that decrease the same for 2022 and then put it back to normal levels in 2023. Our Homestead and Rollback reimbursements,
George, just before we get there, I think two of the concerns is, one, long-term effects on property tax are unknown right now.
Mhm.
I mean, these are very reasonable assumptions, but they're not as, we're not as confident of them, I think I would say it that way.
Right.
And I think it's very much worth saying for state foundation revenue, I'm even less confident.
Right.
There's a lot of unknown on state foundation revenue, and I think it's worthwhile mentioning that out loud, that at a state level, again, they're trying to balance things that are difficult to balance. Revenues are down.
Mm-hmm.
The demands for all that revenue continues to go up.
Right. And then the other thing with the state revenue, as mentioned earlier, is what's going to happen with the formula? Is the formula going to remain the same? Or is there going to be a push for Cut Patterson, or is it going to be something completely different? The Homestead and Rollback, pretty flat for the forecast. The decreases are based off the renewal levy coming off, and which is represented in the red. Other revenue, our TIF fund is in the red, 4 million that we received last year, estimating 4 million this year. In 2022 decreased by 300,000, and that decrease is due to we had 3 tax settlements at the Board of Revision that expire at the end of this calendar year. So once those terms are up, if the Board of Revisions didn't make the adjustment, we could enter into other agreements with those same properties as well. And then other revenues are made up of our tuitions for preschool, kindergarten, other districts, interest, catastrophic aid, Medicaid reimbursements, and so on. And those have those pretty consistent for year over year. The decrease from last year to this year, last year we received a lot of refund from prior year expenditures regarding Bureau of Workers' Compensation. They sent us quite a bit of refunds over the past couple of years. Don't rely on those year to year. If we get them, great. But so far we haven't received any. Moving on to general fund expenditures, where money goes. About 79.4% of our $77 million budget is for salaries and benefits, which is about 61.5 million. Purchase services, the two biggest expenses out of purchase services are contracted services, tuition out, and utilities. Materials and supplies represents about 3.2% of our budget. Equipment represents about 1%, and then other objects, which are county auditor fees to collect our taxes, our general fund debt, transfers and advances make up that category. Salaries are estimated to increase by 1.9 million, and the increases are based off our negotiated agreements based on the salary schedules and the current step movement. Also, last year, we did see some savings due to the school closure under sub-costs and overtime costs, and that's, in 2021 reflects those areas, at least being budgeted for. We'll have to see how those expenses kind of turn out, especially sub-costs is one to watch this year. And then the increases in future years, it's moving the people on the salary schedules and also any changes to the salary schedules based on our negotiated agreements. Slide 25 are benefits. Total benefits increase, we're estimating to increase by $900,000 from last year's $16.9 million spend to this year's $17.8 million budget. The primary increase is the increase in the healthcare costs of the 3%, and then in the out years, increased 8% on the healthcare premiums. And then the STRS, those are based off a percentage of salary. So as salaries go up, those are going to go up. And then in the green, all other, the biggest expense there is our Medicaid, and again, that's a percentage of salary. And also, we have the workers' comp premium, and any unemployment cost is in the green under that other. Purchase services, this kind of fluctuates year to year based on the actual spend. So last year, we spent about $7.8 million. It was down from 2019, which was $8 million, and we have budgeted about $1.9 million, or $9.7 million, so an increase of 1.9. So what makes up that increase is the $500,000 that we increased for the solo tuition, or the solo budget, increase in tuition out of $400,000, and that increase is made up of charter school tuition increasing, estimating from last year was 1.2 million, estimating to 1.4. That increases based on previous year's increases, and then also our Autism Peterson Scholarship increasing by $230,000 as well, due to St. Joseph and John's becoming a Peterson school starting this year. That $200,000 for SJJ, don't know what that number is. Actual number is just an estimate based on our best guess at this point. And then also utilities estimated to increase by $100,000, and then the rest of the increase of $800,000, that's just unspent budget from last year, being budgeted back into this year's expenses. Materials and supplies, same thing, fluctuates year to year based on our need. Increased, last year we spent $1.4 million, 2019 we spent $1.7 million, and the budget's about $2.5 million, so an increase of 1.1. The difference is added $300,000 for the PPE equipment, and the remaining $800,000 was unspent, and you'll notice $300,000 of that unspent was in textbooks, and $100,000 was in our bus fuel. Other objects and transfers and advances. So the biggest category, in the biggest category there is our transfers out and advances to other funds. So what the transfers are, if other funds run negative, the general fund has to cover the negative. And then for our federal funds, they're on a reimbursable basis. So at the end of the year, they're in the negative, the general fund advances to get them whole. And then in the beginning of the fiscal year, once we do our final expenditure reports, which are due at the end of this month, we'll receive those dollars back for federal funds, and we can do the return of advance sometime around October, November to replenish, to put the money back in the general fund. But the transfers, what makes up the transfers for this year, about the 1.2, is $250,000 for food services, $50,000 for school supplies account, $625,000 for termination benefits account, and that one is an annual transfer. This termination benefits doesn't have a revenue source other than the transfer. That's where we pay our severance out to our retiring employees. So rather than paying it out of the general fund, where it could increase our per pupil amount by putting it in another fund, it lets us, it doesn't count against our per pupil amount, so it's kind of just shifting the expenses, which we're legally allowed to do. So it won't skew our per pupil spending on a year-to-year basis. Also added $100,000 for athletics, and then we have our annual $60,000 for turf savings. So again, this is one that we're gonna have to monitor for this year, specifically for food service and athletics.
George said it was 250 for the food service, 50K for what was it?
The uniform, school supplies.
Thank you.
So that fund is where we charge the school fees.
Mhm.
It's, the expenses are paid out of the same budgets. But with the credits this year, last year we had about a transfer of 25,000. So with the money going out based on credits and refunds, I made it 50 just to kind of see where it's at, just as an estimate. And then moving on, so adding all these together is our general fund summary. So the highlighted column is our current fiscal year, beginning the general fund with 41.7 million, total revenues 81.4, total expenses 77.4, so leaving a revenues over expenses of $4 million. And then, as you can see in the out years, for fiscal year 2022, we're about revenues over expenses 2.1, and then in 2023, the first half of the 2015 levy comes off, and then in 2024, the other half of the 2015 levy comes off, and then in 25, the first levy comes off, and then half of the second levy comes off. But the point that I wanted to show here is that we rely on those two operating levies to get us through, because if they were approved, I added back those amounts into the revenues. You can see that in fiscal year 2023, we're still operating efficiently. 24 and then 25 would begin deficit spending, which is what we kind of predicted when we went out for that second renewal to get us to 10 years. And then it also leaves, so we end this fiscal year, if these expenses and revenues come in as is, it'll leave us with an unencumbered balance of 43.9. Again, with the expenses and revenues, these are the budgeted amounts. So both sides, a little conservative, but not too much. So there could be some savings, and the numbers could fluctuate a little bit. Also, as I was telling Ms. Lee earlier, that this forecast is what we know today. It could be wrong tomorrow, and it could change the next day, and so on. But our goal is to be as accurate as possible. And when I prepare it, I go through every line, for the salaries and benefits, go through every person where they're on the steps schedule, move them out for the next 5 years where they're going to be, and also look at what healthcare they're on. So a lot of detail goes into it. But again, the assumption, it's only as good as our assumptions and what we know as of today, and our best estimate as what we know now. So I'll turn it over to the board for any questions.
Any questions for George? So I will compliment you. I mean, I know how much detail goes in, but if you think about just employees, we have how many employees again?
729.
And you forecast their salaries individually.
And benefits.
So you have to project 5 years where they're going to be. So it's not an insignificant task. It's not just let's take our thumb and make some guesses. It's a very rigorous process.
Right.
This is the first 5-year forecast that this board will approve. So recognizing just timing, I appreciate the report. When we get to Board of Education other, we'll pull out our calendars and schedule a special meeting. And one of the tasks of that special meeting will be to approve the 5-year forecast prior to the end of month deadline.
No, the annual budget. The forecast will do it.
What did I say?
You said the forecast.
Thank you.
And we have to
Approve the annual budget by the deadline.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions from the board?
Just thank you.
Oh,
You do a
you're
great
welcome.
job explaining it, and I appreciate that, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so my next item on the agenda is item C, which is new funds for 2021. And they were for the grants that I've mentioned during the presentation, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant, and the Library Services CARES Act mini grant. The previous CARES Act was approved previously earlier in the year. Grant approvals for those 3 grants, which is under item D, and then item E, which is the student activity program budgets and purpose and goals, which can be found in Exhibit C, which I have at your desk. We had approved those at the end of June, but updated a few based on their actual ending cash balances. Mr. Miko, if that's one that you want to pull off as well, off the consent calendar with item B, we could approve those at the special meeting since those are kind of tied together. And item F is the invoice order approval. It's an annual invoice that we have for Scholastic News and Classroom Digital Publications for the middle school. The middle school had a vacancy in secretary for a few months over the summer, and what happened here, the reason the purchase order is after the invoice was, it was one of those annual renewals, and with a vacancy in secretary, the PO wasn't done until we got the invoice. So it was planned, the purchase order didn't happen.
George,
prior.
you said that's the middle school
Correct.
only? Okay.
Yeah,
thank
middle
you.
school only.
Thank you.
And with that, if there's no further questions, concludes my report.
Any questions for George? Who was the media assistant that did the library services grant?
I'll look at Jenny. Is it Lori Swollen? Is that her name at the high school?
Yeah, Lori Costin-Swallen.
Well, we need to make sure to thank her, because it was great that she did that, and, a mini grant, it might not sound like a lot, but $3,000 is a lot of money. So thank you to her for that effort. Dr. Ryba, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Miko and board. What I want to do today is give another update on where we're at with our restart plan. As many of you know, I've had a couple of meetings earlier today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight quickly some of the things that have already been put out there in the community conversation. And those are recorded so people could see those. If you want me to go into any more detail, let me know. But the goal for today is to reiterate the plan for students to return and what that looks like over the next few weeks. Talk about my recommendation for how we should operate at the middle school and high school level September 28th and moving forward. And then to share kind of a day in the life of a student, what they would be experiencing versus, I tend to talk at, big picture procedural items that we're doing, but talk a little bit about the building plans, what it will look like. And then we spent a lot of time talking with our staff today and our parents on the community conversation of COVID protocols, communication, contact tracing, quarantine, isolation, dashboard, all of that stuff. So we have those slides there. Jenny's more than willing to go through those again if you would like. But again, those were talked in detail on the community conversation. And if there's things we want to highlight or questions, we can, or she can go through it for a third time. Again, we are operating in all aspects of this plan. We're currently in remote 2.0. In a few days, we'll be working in blended and then move to in-person for some of our students. And as we talked about earlier, and Mr. Miko, you mentioned at the beginning, the paths may differ to get there, but the end goal is the same. And we are working to build these pathways and to provide supports to all of our students, no matter which pathway that they're on. So I appreciate our folks that came and made a public comment. And I want to reiterate what Mr. Miko did or stated is that we have the same goal. And we want to offer that for all of our students. But there are competing factors, and if you would like to sit down and talk with me about those competing factors and how we can problem solve those competing factors and what a timeline may look like when we take a look at technological, structural, financial, and capacity of folks right now, I'd be more than willing to have that conversation. And so, as we look at moving forward and bringing our students back to school, this is the one slide I forgot to update out of all of them. So we are now 5 weeks in level 2 orange. So that comes out on Thursdays. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, you said we were going to be in remote for the full quarter. I said we should plan for being in remote for the full quarter, and if conditions improved, that we would come back to school earlier. Conditions have improved. Those conditions are not made up by me. They're what were recommended by the Board of Health. And those conditions have not only improved, but they've been sustained. 5 weeks in level orange, 4 weeks under the 5% positivity rate. We're actually at 3.7% last week. And tomorrow, the Board of Health will release their update of that data. And on Monday, the Board of Health released updated guidelines, which for where we're currently at, they consider it scenario 2. It's orange for 4 weeks and positivity rate for less than 5%. And what it states is that if we're in this environment in the county, which we are, that some students would be able to come back to school, and their recommendation, if those students can be cohorted in a way which mitigates movement or intermingling of the cohorts, and other students may be necessary to stay in virtual learning if that can't occur. So we've taken that recommendation, which is updated from the July 31st recommendation, into consideration as we take a look and move forward. So for the week of September 21st, as we've shared throughout the day today, and our principals have shared this repeatedly, students will come back in some fashion. So it is a phase-in week. It's a week about getting students back in the building comfort level with procedures and protocols and routines. How we move from class to class at the secondary level, or how we eat lunch or go to recess, are going to be completely different. To have the time necessary at preschool and the half-day kindergarten level, they will be coming in every day for next week. So Monday through Thursday for the preschool, and Monday through Friday for the half-day kindergarten. Full-day kindergarten through 5th grade, they will be following the traditional blended schedule. We've sent that out in a calendar form a couple times. The green day group will be Monday, Wednesday. The white day group will be Tuesday, Thursday. And on the opposite days, Friday will be an asynchronous day for all, and on the opposite days, it'll be home at asynchronous. And then 6 to 12, as I've shared, it's a little different because they needed an orientation day for our new students to the building. So Monday will be an orientation day for 6th and 9th grade, and then they will follow the white-green schedule. Tuesday and Thursday is white day, Wednesday, Friday is a green day. Moving forward. For students in our solo program that are returning to in-person, they will follow the same schedule because we need them to be versed in the procedures and protocols, so they will attend school and at that time and get involved in the asynchronous learning. For students that are in Remote 2.0 and moving to solo, they will stay with Remote 2.0 for that week. They'll complete everything asynchronously, so those 2 days they won't come to school. And September 25th will be their last day with Remote 2.0. Monday, September 28th, they'll move to solo. So that's next week. So I want to share my recommendation moving forward for how we would go to September 28th after we get in this phase-in period. So what I am recommending, and I've suggested this for a while now, is that pre-K to 5 students would return to school as of September 28th, 5 days a week, all students back every day that's there. Preschool is still only 4 days a week. But the reason we're able to do that is if you look at what we're able to accomplish at the elementary level, and we'll talk about that as the typical school day, I'll get into more details, but students are going to be cohorted together. We have smaller enrollment numbers, 350 students to 550 students. The cohort, as I said earlier today, we're probably ranging from the upper teens to the mid-20s for class sizes. Socially distanced at 5 feet, very limited mixing of cohorts throughout the day that we feel we can mitigate risk, we can provide a safe and healthy environment, and we can welcome all of our students back for in-person learning. So that is my recommendation and my continued recommendation for pre-K to 5. For students in 6th to 12th grade, we've taken a measured approach to returning to school. And I think when you look at the enrollment at those levels and you look at 1,200-ish students at the middle school, 1,900 plus students at the high school, that changes the scope of training and procedural updates and managing students at that level. So my recommendation is that for the next 4 weeks, that the middle school and high school continue on with that blended learning schedule. So again, that would be 2 days a week of in-person instruction and 3 days of asynchronous learning, like they were doing with Remote Learning 2.0. Not as much live interaction because our teachers are teaching at that time, but there will be check-in opportunities throughout students' day that are at home. And then, so, during this 4-week blended period, again, it's going to allow us with just mathematics, 1,000 students in the building at the high school at a time, 600, 550 students in the building at a time at the middle school, to learn from those experiences, learn from those smaller groups, and best prepare for all students to return at the start of the second quarter. So before I continue on kind of with the timeline, since this is a recommendation that I'm providing, I wanted to give the opportunity for questions or feedback or comments on the proposed plan for students starting the week of the 28th.
Cameron, if we are fortunate to go into a yellow phase, which is what's level 1, I believe, how does that impact this? And also on the other end of it, if we happen to go into a red phase, what happens at that point?
So looking at my recommendation, I think we need to give our families consistency and stability over the next 4 weeks. So I am not, at this point, my recommendation is based on what I think is best for the rest of the first quarter. So yellow wouldn't impact pre-K to 5, right? They're already there. But for 6 to 12, as we take a look at it, we're orange right now. If you look at, if you want to use the Board of Health recommendation as a foundational point, they are saying 4 weeks of yellow, not just 1 week of yellow. So if we, my recommendation for 6 to 12 for yellow is not altered. When we take a look at our graphics for what we would do in red, for most of the secondary, it would be a blended structure as well. We'd again have to see what the conditions are at that time, but knock on wood, things are trending in the right direction, and it seems like we're going to be in a good spot for a while, hopefully. And as I talked about last time, we're looking at trends, and we promised our community we'd stay at least in 2 weeks in a learning framework. But a 1 week of red wouldn't necessarily mean that we would change that. We'd have to start to see a pattern that, okay, we're going to be in red for a little bit. Maybe we need to adjust our learning framework.
And you mentioned check-ins for the people that are on the asynchronous, or I guess days off and at home learning. Can you give kind of an insight to what that looks like? Is there actual interaction between the teacher at some point in the day? Is there, in a circumstance where like an honors class where maybe only one offered, is there an opportunity for that to be something besides just the teaching at home?
So on those asynchronous days so there's a specific plan for the elementary level, and since we're not recommending that right now, unless you would like.
I was talking more specific to the
secondary.
6 to 12.
Yeah, so there will be check-ins with kids at home, with the students at home. I can't speak to the details as to, it's more going to be based on the class, based on the needs of the students there. So, Jenny, I don't know if you know any specifics about the asynchronous plan for the secondary level.
Yeah, so, again, over the summer, they had training on how to, provide if you think of it in a 2-week, it's easy to think of it like in a 2-week learning unit, where there's going to be, possibly instruction that the teachers provide on those asynchronous days that are like a video and options for kids to kind of go through and choose based on what they need and their own learning. But yes, there is opportunity for teachers to check in, especially on the Friday. There's going to be times for office hours for kids to log in, ask questions, those that need help. Through Google Classroom and the communication and the platforms that they're using, there's a constant dialogue between the teacher and the student to ask those questions and to provide either more enrichment for instruction or, remediation or review or whatever it may be. So yes, there are opportunities for that.
And the part that I would like to add on to that is, we've got to kind of redefine what we think as an instructional plan for a school week. So, I know maybe our mind goes to, and it was brought up earlier today in the public comment about, kids doing worksheets at home. Well, that's not the expectation we have. That's not the training that we've provided for our staff. So if you take a look at whether you want to say, a flipped classroom, a high flex classroom, whatever you want to terms you want to use. It's the opportunity that when we take a look at learning, there is learning that I need a teacher, I need direct instruction, I need a coach with me to help facilitate and guide. And then there's also learning that I'm going to investigate, I'm going to self-discover, I'm going to work through, I'm going to problem solve, whether that's individually or as a small group. So I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect out of the gate, you know, but the training we've provided is redesigning what that is, and it's not just, hey, when you're with me live on Monday as a Green Day, on Tuesday you're just going to do worksheets and homework at home, and then on Wednesday we'll catch you back up again. So the learning framework and structure is evolved to really look at a blended structure and a 5-day plan that encompasses independent student work and in-person work with a teacher. And we've had those classes at the high school in the past. We had a blended learning English class at the high school in the past where it was that structure, you know, that we're kind of working in now.
Just a clarification. Typically, the elementary school operates in trimesters, correctly? And then middle and higher quarters.
Correct.
Is that still the way that this is running?
Still the way it's running.
So the high school ending point in middle school would be different than the end of the trimester for the elementary?
Correct.
Thank you.
Would there ever be an opportunity to add in more live instruction on Fridays?
Yeah, so one of the things that it was always a part of the plan, is that if we were going to operate in blended learning for a sustained period of time, that would become another instructional day. You know, what I've got to reflect on a little more and see what is the possibilities. When you take a look at, really next week is a phase-in week. If memory serves, after that we've got 3 weeks of blended learning. And then teachers are now preparing for the next transition of in-person learning. And it's not just, okay, we're going back to normal, we're going back to the way things used to be. You know, we also need to provide support and training for how are we going to continue to, how are we now teaching in person, but I've got to support students that are quarantined, are absent, are isolated. So as Mr. Micko said at the beginning, what's on our teachers' plate is significant. What's on our administrators' plate is significant. So for these 3 weeks, I don't have an answer, Ms. Hauser, for this at this time. If we would move to go to the Friday, that's something we can talk about, and we just have to balance with the other factors that are a part of then transitioning for the second quarter to in-person and all that entails.
Don, I think that's what one of the things I was discussing is that idea that this is where we're going to start. And as things go along, it could be something as simple as after the first week, and the teacher realizes, I'm not getting a lot of students interacting with me on Friday. Well, what am I going to use that time for? Now, that might be preparing lessons, that might be doing whatever. It might very well be, hey, I know, you know, all the students, we're going to have that class, you know, and so hopefully we can take those opportunities and continue to grow and see how we're going to progress. Assuming our trends continue as they are, you know, we've discussed the challenges at the high school. Can you just dialogue a little bit on what those challenges are and how we're going to get from today till October 16th, 17th, October 19th?
So at the middle school and high school, you know, some of the challenges that we have now are going to be present when students come back. The additional time is about ensuring the health and safety of our kids, making sure, you know, can we replicate the experiences of some other school districts that are currently operating in a blended structure where they haven't seen prevalence or spread. At the high school level, one of the challenges that we're problem solving is that to socially distance at 5 feet in our classroom, on average, we can fit 25 desks. If you are familiar with the high school schedule, or if you're not, basically you run a schedule. Every teacher has their X amount of classes, and it distributes students to all of those classes. And class sections are built on total enrollment. So just for easy math, I have 100 kids that signed up for Algebra 1. I know I'm going to put in the computer that I need 4 Algebra 1 classes. The computer, when it does the scheduling for the kids, one section, it doesn't make it perfectly 25, 25, 25, and 25. One class may have 28, the other may have 20, one may have 31, just based on other classes the kids are taking. So the challenge that we're having is if we take a look at a teacher's schedule, they may have 3 periods of the day that they have students that are 25 or 25 students or less, and then they have 2 periods a day where they may have 28 students, 30 students. So the first thing we started with earlier in the summer was like, okay, now that we've got the schedule finalized, now that we know those sections that are above 25, let's go through and try to redistribute the kids. You know, look at those sections that are lower, transfer kids, do the best we can with the schedule, and let's narrow that number down. And so we did that. And then the next step was, if we need to add, we call it a 6th class. So it's saying a teacher, we're going to ask for teachers, if I'm an Algebra 1 teacher, hey, instead of taking a planning period, can you take an additional class? We pay additional for that class to do that, and we've done that in the past. We are at a point where there's too many sections above 25 where we physically can't offer that many. It's not even a financial thing, it's just a staffing issue. So what we've got to look at, and we'll be meeting, continuing our conversations and discussions next week, is how do we address the number of students in the classroom? You know, how does that impact social distancing, or how do we utilize other space? How do we think creatively in terms of how we give students access to the classroom or other flexible spaces? So those are some of the things that we need to problem solve, and we have been and will continue to problem solve at the high school level. But the other issues are more, as I kind of said in the slide here, of learning with smaller groups, smaller number of students. You know, as we take a look, you know, Jenny's our COVID coordinator, and so one of the things that she's responsible for is, you know, how do we, not just COVID positive tests or exposure to somebody that's positive, but how do we deal with symptoms? And what is the procedure for somebody that says, hey, I have a fever, and the work that, you know, that she does for adults and our district nurse does for students to determine that, and the contact tracing that has to happen. If you look at an average student at the middle school is going to have 160 to 200 students that they may interact with. If we can do that for, you know, 80 to 100 students, then that's a different story. At the middle school, there's one issue that is not going to be able to be problem solved. It is just a difference in the hybrid or blended structure. Kids will be able to eat lunch in the commons because we have enough room to socially distance and staff to supervise. When we go back to all in person, students have been assigned to a classroom based on a certain period of day. We can guarantee those seats are socially distanced in the classroom based on how they're already set up. So that will be there as well. That'll be a change for students between the blended and the in-person.
Jenny, I think this question needs to go to you. The process when somebody has to be quarantined, whether it be from a positive case or from contact tracing, they potentially could have been exposed. What does it look like from a student standpoint to be able to continue their education?
So that's kind of part of the plan that we have devised with the teachers, with the Google Classroom, and having their, you know, having it be a little bit more, and I know it's harder for the elementary level, but having it be a little bit more independently focused so that there are things that they can work on, that they can do. You know, and it'll depend if there's one student that's, you know, quarantined, and how the teacher can interact and set up times to, you know, work with that student, versus if it's a whole classroom. We would probably go back to a remote, you know, time where those students would log in that way, if it was more than that. But, you know, we're working through that right now. You know, the important thing is that if the Google Classroom is live and the teachers are putting on videos and they're putting on their live instruction, recording that, then kids can log in at any time and see that, you know, at home. So, you know, if a teacher is teaching a math lesson in the classroom and they record it as they're doing that live instruction only, and they can put it on the Google Classroom, and then the student can view that and work on that from home.
And so if we kind of compare this to where were we last year when students were absent, right? They called, they got the work, they got the books, they did it at home all by themselves. And so, you know, what we're able to do now is, you know, if you're out for those first 2 days, then it's going to be the asynchronous. But if you're out for more than 2 days, then we're going to be able to, you know, our teachers are going to have live check-ins and support with our students to make sure. You know, the concern is, you know, the day-to-day absences, that's why we put that. You know, I may be out for a day here, a day there, or a couple days back-to-back. That's, you know, before COVID, that's typical. Those are things we can work with. But when we have students that are quarantined or isolated and out of school for up to, you know, 10 days, 14 days, that's where we need to provide some additional support. So there's specific plans in our Responsible Restart Guide for each of the levels of how that would work, but the general idea is what I just shared in terms of asynchronous for the first 2, and then after that, asynchronous plus live teacher support.
Jenny, are teachers, you said they're going to be recording their classes? Is that just some of them, or, and are they going to be posting them, all of them, or just certain classes?
So when we talked to the staff today, Cameron, you know, shared that it's important, it's just a good practice for all kids, you know, if just that portion of live instruction, so not the entire time. If the teacher's interacting with certain kids and helping individually, or the kids are working kind of independently on something, that part won't be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just be, you know, the live instruction. If the teacher's demonstrating something or providing that direct, you know, content explanation, that's the part that would be recorded and put on their Google Classroom. And when I say best practice for all students, you know, I know that my own kids come home and they are confused about, I can't remember what the teacher said, I can't remember how to work through this math problem. And so to see it again, you know, and, oh yeah, that's the step I'm missing. I just think it's good practice, and as Cameron said, you know, and we told our staff, we're continually evolving from what we once knew as teaching and providing the content. We're trying to move toward allowing our students to be more problem solvers. I mean, they're forcing themselves to be a lot more independent and empowering themselves to guide their own learning as well. And then it's important, and it's a great skill. You know, if you have a question, if you don't understand, we want you to come to us and get that explanation. So the idea, yes, is it wouldn't be like a 40-minute lesson per se on that's on there that they would watch, but, you know, whatever portion of the lesson was live instruction, direct instruction.
So if that is being recorded, why would somebody not be able to log in and watch live?
The reason we're not, are you talking about like kids at home being able to log in and?
Yeah, if they're quarantined and that class is being, that lesson is being recorded. I think it's great that we are continuing to evolve in the fact that we're able to do that and allow the students to, again, have that lesson to learn from. But if they're at home and they're able to log in at that time that lesson's being taught, what's the barrier at this point?
Well, I didn't hear the last part. What is the what?
What's the barrier? What's the reason why they wouldn't be able to log in to see that class at that time versus having to watch it later?
So I think there's a vast difference between recording a portion of my lesson and having it available later, and having a class with me in person and a class live at home, and being able to manage and interact with both of those at this time. So what I'm saying is that that's not something that's never going to happen. It's just as we take a look at building the capacity of our staff and where they're at, we need more time to support that, because what I'm afraid of is that we create an experience that meets nobody's expectations. Mm. So, you know, there's this idea of what this could be, and we provide that, and then it doesn't work as intended because of a variety of factors. And then we're creating a lessened experience for the kids in person, and we're creating a lesser of an experience for students that are online. And so, you know, when we talk about recording a lesson, so the projector that's back here, I have the ability to not be on video, but I have the ability to record what I'm writing on my interactive whiteboard and capture my voice. So if I'm a math teacher, I can go up there and write on the board and do that, and students can see me solve the problems. And so I've got a great quality image. I've got, you know, a quality video. All of our teachers have the webcams that they can utilize. It's a difference between me teaching up here and having a webcam near in front of me than just live streaming it throughout. So It's a part where I think it's also a part of the pacing, Seth, of, allowing our teachers the time to be successful in the work that they're doing versus trying to do too much at once and failing at all of them. So what we're hopeful of is the asynchronous videos can help support all students if you're in person. We've offered that opportunity to students in the solo program that would like to do that asynchronously and see those videos, as well as it helps the issues that we have with students. We're building a system that lives beyond, just kids that are in the classroom. It's going to help support students that are out, for day-to-day absences, for quarantine and isolation. So as we talk about the evolution and the pacing on what we need to do, I said on one of the calls earlier today, we have some ideas and plans for how we will and how we can evolve solo, and how that evolution can lead to what you're asking. But we're just not ready to do that and do that successfully at this point in time.
And if I could just add one more thing to that. Some teachers may not, they may pre-record a lesson, through a different means. And when I talk about these learning plans, they can give a student the option, if you want to watch my video, me doing it, you can do that. If you want to work on a program on the computer to get the content, you can do that. Or you can, do this sheet or whatever it is, you can do that. So giving them options for it, so it might not always be live, and kind of flipping it where now the teacher, when they have the students in the classroom, they can facilitate and go around and provide that individual attention that they need for students. So that's another reason that, they are still kind of doing that model as well.
You mentioned the technology, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You mentioned the technology that you're going to use, that they can use as webcams in every classroom. Is that pre-K to 12, and what exactly are those? Like, are they mobile units? Can you speak a little more to the technology that they have available?
Right, so it is just a webcam, a little webcam that can be on your computer. What Dave and his team, we've got them in every classroom, correct, Dave? Yeah, so they took the webcam, they kind of MacGyvered it on a mount, so it's on almost like a microphone arm, and they have a C-clamp on them where I can move it and I can attach it to a desk, I could attach it to a table. So the idea being, if I have a podium, if I have a table in front of me, I can clamp on the webcam. I could use my Chromebook if I would like to. I can use my Epson projector to do that. So that's the technology that they have available.
And it would just be as simple as record, stop, and then later posting.
Right, so what we shared with our teachers today is, again, with the capacity and the balance of that, we're not, the only things that we're asking differently to do is hit record and stop.
Okay.
So I'm going to teach the same lesson. I just need to make sure that I'm going to position my camera in a way, or I'm going to use the Epson projector in a way that meets the needs of the lesson. But they've been doing this work in Remote Learning 2.0. The only difference with the work is, instead of sitting at my little hub, I'm going to now be up. I could possibly still be at that hub, or I could be up in front. So same concept, same flexibility. And what I shared with the teachers today is, depending on the class, I may teach, English 9 4 times during the school day. You just need to do it once. Have it done once, and you're ready to go. And then, to post it to your classroom. Because again, as Jenny said, this is just good practice. I can go back, watch the video, refresh my memory, and help guide my learning when I'm outside of school.
I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyways. For special needs with IEPs and so forth, each of those person obviously have their own contact with the district. They are working with them directly to come up with formulate a plan that is going to continue their education in a manner that's going to work for that particular family, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, as far as, right now our main lane for pre-K to 5 is 5 days a week, et cetera. When that doesn't work for special needs, we can adjust. And then vice versa, right now our plan is blended at the middle school and at the high school, but if that's not working for special needs, we can adjust.
And that's already been adjusted, or in the process of, Jenny and I met with our special education coordinators today, and, we problem solved a handful of students today. So as far as my recollection from the meeting and the work that we've done, they're still working on finalizing communications and working with the parents for this last group of students that we needed to have some unique solutions to get the services and the specially designed instruction that the students need. But yes, all of them have their specific plan. If you're in blended and you need services and to come into the building more, that works. If it's less, we can do it in a different way, yeah.
And then I just wanted to, from my opinion, our board meeting, we have 1, 2, 3 cameras. We have 2 volunteers that do an excellent job of operating 2 of those cameras. We have a person in a truck, all to broadcast our board meeting. And I recognize that it's not as simple as just saying, press start, and it all just magically happens. We all get our anecdotal comments, et cetera, but I do get a lot of anecdotal comments that Remote 2.0, everybody appreciates the hard work everyone's doing, but it is not the education that our children need. And if we can safely bring them back, that's an avenue. If we can accommodate those who are looking at the tea leaves differently, we can work to do that. But I go back to what we said, if we try to do everything all at once, we will just do everything poorly all at once. And I don't know, I don't think it's germane or helpful to just debate the merits or something of all of this, but I do think it's important to highlight that we need a starting point, and then we need to work on getting better every day. And I don't want that phrase to be trite or misunderstood, but we do need to have a starting point, and we do need to work at improving on it, whether it's improving delivery or what have you. But it is, if anybody wants to, it doesn't take long to go on YouTube and find some examples of people who just pressed record and thought they were going to have a great video, and it doesn't work. And so I think we need to find that balance point of how do we do things well, and then whether the term is grow or evolve or whatever, but learn from that. Yeah, you need to record, if you're teaching 4 English classes, you need to record that one. The way the real world works is the one you record is the one you're going to trip over your mouth and what you're saying, and something's going to distract, etc. So I think it's great that we're stretching and trying to do that, but I think it's important that we recognize that we are asking a lot, and it's not as simple as just saying, hey, turn something on, or hey, I look at Dave, and I know how hard it is for me to locate good quality webcams, and they've all tripled in price, and even if you had the money, they're not available, they're backlogged, etc. So we will continue to problem solve, we will continue to get better, but I think it's important to recognize there are a lot of unbalanced issues. Do you want to?
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can.
Thank you. Just so I understand the technology piece correctly, recognizing that there are challenges with recording things, what is the last piece between recording something and posting it later and recording it and having it live? Is there different technology involved?
There's not different technology that's going to be affordable on the scope of every classroom in the district. So when you take a look at, and I had a parent email me about another school district, if you have the technology where you have, cameras that will move and follow you and, truly have a distance learning experience, we can't recreate that. So in terms of the technology and scope and the quality of video, I don't see, Dave may be able to correct me, but, when you look at all classrooms across the district, I don't see that the webcam solution is going to be any different. One thing, and I don't know the cost of them, the one issue that I think we would need to look at problem solving is the sound quality. You know, how expensive are microphones? You know, what is the mobility of those microphones to address? Because if you've been in any classrooms, the idea that a teacher is going to stand in one spot is just not realistic for a full class live streaming. The other part that would be required, and this is not so to me, that's the technology piece. I think in terms of the Chromebooks or the webcams, those can make do, because I don't think it's scalable the other way. Microphones, we can see what the cost is and what we can do there. The part that is really a key piece is the training and professional development that our staff need to truly learn how to engage and manage two different platforms at the same time. There's a difference between saying, you know, hey, I'm going to work with you in person. You guys in person keep busy for a minute. I'm going to go work with these kids over here that are online, versus how do we truly have an integrated classroom environment where students, no matter where they're seated, have that experience. So, you know, in talking to some colleagues that are starting this work in other parts of the state, you know, and asking, you know, what are some lessons learned? What are some things that you've done? It's the coaching, the training piece to help support, as Rich has said, you know, to do it successfully and to meet the experience that kids at home would be engaged in. Because I think we can all feel, and maybe it was my community conversation earlier today, that like when I got to watch something on a video, you know, I phase in and out, you know, and so if I'm going to say my whole school day is going to be watching things streamed, we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that is not just passive at the end at home and more interactive. And no discredit to our teachers, but the skills are not there yet because we haven't lived or breathed or worked in that environment, except for a few teachers at they didn't even live stream. That was just the blended learning. So we haven't done that at this point in time.
I can appreciate the challenges with the teachers and the learning curve, but just so I understand clearly, the current webcams cannot stream live. Is that true?
No, it would be the same as Remote 2.0.
So that's what they're using currently?
Yeah, they're using, most teachers have their desktop, which is linked to the webcam, and then they have their Chromebook as a second device to have multiple views. But in terms of what we would use to stream, it could be, you know, a webcam, it can be the camera built into a Chromebook or computer. But when you look at that, depending on which device you use, depends on what is the scope of view that you're going to get.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Cameron, if we can go through it, I think we can continue the conversation.
Sure.
And I'm sure it'll be fluid.
So with that recommendation, that means for the week of September 28th, preschool and elementary will attend school every day. High school and middle school will follow the blended learning schedule for the next 4 weeks. And then students in the Solo and Solo 2.0 program will either continue or begin their work in the virtual program on that week of September 28th. So even though I talked about this earlier today, I think it's important to talk about, you know, communications with Solo, with students that are new to the Solo program. Right, we have students that are already in the Solo program. This change and this transition is not going to impact them. They're going to continue to work. But for new Solo parents, Aaron is going to send an introductory email on Monday. This is organizational, managerial stuff. Here's what it's going to look like. If you were in Solo and you need to get books and materials, here's how we're going to do that, and just kind of give a lay of the land for what this is going to look like. Then Friday, there's going to be a second communication for K-5 students. You'll be informed who your teacher is for Solo 2.0, and you'll get those links for Google Classroom. If you're at the secondary level, it will be your login information for Edmentum. And so that's the communications that would happen there. And as you know, was said earlier in public comment, we did offer options. Nobody said they were wonderful options, but they are options nonetheless for students that we could not recreate. And this is something that we're all passionate about. We don't want students to have to sacrifice their pathway, their courses, their hard work because of their reasons to stay home. And so one of the options that we were able to put in place right now is if the course isn't offered in Solo, and we've listed some specific courses there, that you could either take an alternative course You can come to the building and take that. You know, and the reason may be, I'm not comfortable being there 8 periods a day, but I could go there 1 period a day. I can do my thing, go to that class and leave, or 2 classes. So some people have actually already taken us up on that option. Or to complete it asynchronously. Again, not the greatest option, but if option A is asynchronously through Edmentum, or option B is asynchronously with Strongsville City Schools teachers and Strongsville City School curriculum, and I'm a remote 2.0 and I've already been in the class and I want to continue on, that may be a better option for some students. So this is where I wanted to go through kind of a day in the life of our students. And again, because of time, I'm going to go relatively quickly, but if there's things that you would like me to pause or take a little more time, we could do that. So we start at the beginning of the day before you even come to school, and this is an important aspect, is we all need to do our due diligence to do our daily health screening. This has been linked in our Restart comprehensive guide. It's linked here. It's basically 2 questions. Do you have any of these symptoms? If you do, stay home. Have you had contact, or have you been exposed to anybody that's COVID positive, or are you currently being tested for COVID? If that's yes, stay home. So we understand that our students are going to have significantly more absences than they had in the past, and we're okay with that. They haven't loosened the state laws at all. But we are understanding of that. We have form letters that we have to send, but the idea that we have to have an attendance intervention meeting plan, as long as we know and we're in communication with the families, there's things like that that we can forgo. So the big symptoms we want to talk about is the fever, the respiratory distress or cough, shortness of breath, and loss of taste or smell. If you have any of those are definite stay homes. And if you have any of the other symptoms, still stay home. But those are ones that may be related to COVID, may be related to just a virus or bug that's going around. So you need to be symptom-free for 24 hours without medication. And if you have enough symptoms where you went to get a COVID test, you need a negative test, and you still need those symptoms to no longer be present. So this is where we need our families to be transparent. You know, kind of the joke of families with younger kids is, let's give them whatever the fever-reducing medicine is and let's see how they do. That can't be the case anymore. We need to make sure, if we have students with symptoms, that they're staying home, calling the attendance line, to report that and to share whether there's COVID-19 symptoms or suspected exposure. Keep us in the loop, be transparent with us, and that way we can plan accordingly and make sure that we don't have spread.
Cameron, if I can just want to comment. This is something that I'm very concerned about. I saw the article in the paper today of a family in Massachusetts knew that their child was COVID positive and sent the child to school anyways. And now I forget the exact number, but there's 60 to 72 children that are isolated. They probably don't have it, but because of the contact tracing, they're isolated. So those are the consequences. So we do need partnership from parents, et cetera. And then my question is we've committed to having our dashboard, and we've committed to updating it on a daily basis. What expectations should we be setting? Because those numbers are going to fluctuate. And just because you see a number, what would be how should we coach parents and the public on how to interpret those if they, if 10 show up?
So in terms of, let's just talk specifics a little bit. We have 2 things, and let me just go to the dashboard so we can see it and talk about what's on here. So remember, in the data, for the building data, it's students and staff. So it's a combination. District staff is people in this building, transportation, maintenance, mechanics. So isolations are confirmed or presumed COVID positive. So presumed COVID positive would be a doctor saying, we're not going to give you a test, but we believe you have COVID, or confirmed. So those would be active isolations. That means you have tested positive personally and you are isolated for 10 days. So you will see we have one individual at the high school that falls into that category. And if you watch the dashboard, in 10 days, that number will go away. When you take a look at active quarantines, this is somebody that has been exposed to somebody that's COVID positive. And there's specific, when Jenny and her team Jenny, and Crystal, they do the contact tracing, there's specific criteria that's used. It's not everybody in the classroom, so it's, 10 minutes or more, 6 feet or less than 6 feet in 10 minutes, you're considered to be exposed. 6 feet, for 15 minutes, you're considered to be exposed. So those numbers will be on there for 14 days. The numbers that are not included on here are the symptoms. So if I call in and say I have a fever, you do not go on this list because you don't meet the definition, not our definition, the Board of Health definition of quarantine, which is I've been exposed to somebody positive, or isolation, which means I have it. We will see when students come back how these numbers will fluctuate, but those will be updated on a daily basis. And it's also important to note, and it's put in the notes at the bottom in the gray box, is that these numbers are not cumulative. So as those 10 days expire, those numbers will come off, numbers will come on. As we talked about earlier today, what are some guidelines of what we're going to do to shut down classrooms, shut down buildings? So we've talked about, if we have two students that are COVID positive in a classroom, we would shut that down. Jenny, remind me, how many classrooms would shut down a building? Was it 2?
Yeah, I think 2 at the elementary, and I think we said 5 at the high school or middle school.
And so we have criteria, but these are guiding forces, right? So if we, as you said, if we have a student that came into a classroom and exposed, the half of the class, then we would shut down the classroom. But what the parameters we said is, if I go to the classroom and I only expose the people that are sitting around me, and 4 or 5 kids have to go under quarantine, then we can still continue to operate the class with 20, some kids in the class or whatever it may be.
And would it be difficult to get the date on the dashboard?
The date as to when each of these is in there?
No, just the date, because when they don't change, you're like, well, was it updated or wasn't it updated?
Okay.
And just in the lower right-hand corner or
updated.
whatever.
We
We're on
will
5
put
o'clock.
this.
And, we've gotten a lot of questions on, how long is it before it updates, et cetera. We're doing as soon as we get the information, we'll update it daily.
And this is-
It's that issue of, if someone gets, Jenny, what time do you traditionally update it?
5 o'clock.
So if someone finds out they're positive at 5:05, there could be a 24-hour lag or what have you, but I think at the end of the day, the goal is to be transparent, and the goal is to give parents and the community the information that lets them know what's going on.
And
I cut you off, Cameron.
No, you're fine. And I think the last point is instead of assuming that we're trying to hide things or control the story, I think there's times where people just need to call and ask the question and find why information was communicated, how we're following the health order in terms of communication. So those are things that, people will see these numbers change. And if you're uncertain or unsure, call us. Call your building principal. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to share. And, there's slides. Again, we're kind of melding these slides together. But in terms of the communication protocol, as soon as we know, we cannot control rumors. And social media is going to move faster than us. That's just the reality of not because we can't move that fast, but we can't control the rumors that are out there. We can only control the facts. So when we have a staff member that there may be, or student that there may be concerns with, they're not on this list until we get a confirmed positive case. So the rumor may go out there, and this is where we all have to do our due diligence. The rumor may go out there is so-and-so was in the isolation clinic. They were coughing, they had a fever, they went home. Why isn't the dashboard have a COVID positive, and why didn't we get an email? Because per the guidelines of the Board of Health, it's not until we get a COVID positive test or a doctor's presumed positive that they go on the list. Then it starts the chain of events of we notify the people that need to be quarantined because they're a direct contact. We notify the groups, the athletes, the bus, the classroom. We notify the parents in the building. We notify the staff in the building. So, we just need to understand that the numbers are the numbers. I have no need to do anything but report the numbers that Jenny reported them at 5 p.m. every day and share that. And that's continue to be how we will operate. But please understand that there may be talk in the community or the classroom that gets out before we have anything confirmed to do our part. So call and ask, and we'll tell you everything we possibly can that doesn't violate certain privacy rules we have to follow.
Can I just say
Yeah.
one thing about that? So, I ask that for everybody to understand that, like Cameron just said, we have to balance the confidentiality of that individual with letting people that need to know immediately know so that they can take the appropriate, precautions that they need to do. It's important because I just think if it was my child and people or me as a staff member and people are talking about rumors of what I did or what I didn't do or what my child did or didn't do, we have to also, try to be kind. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants to feel like I'm the one that infected somebody else or I did this on purpose or anything. And it's, obviously uncharted territory for a lot of us. So, I would just ask that, I know it's hard to be patient sometimes when you're worried about yourself or your families. I get that. But please, let us do our job. Let us do our investigation. Let us do our work because I don't want to put out incorrect information.
And I just want to thank Jenny and, I don't want to say Nurse Tackleberry.
Crystal.
Thank you. Because it's going to be valuable for us to be able to do that contact tracing in-house quickly. Some of the districts that, we've all followed, et cetera, to try to learn, have said that being able to do it internally has made a big difference because if someone has an infection, and, I think it should go without saying, but, people are going to get sick. We get sick all the time, right? And people are going to get sick with COVID. And, I want to avoid you've done something wrong, guilt type thing. People can get sick. But to be able to minimize that spread, to be able to minimize it from closing a school, from closing a classroom, that's where it's going to become important.
And just as we shared, even though this is presented as a Google slide, it's on our website. It's embedded in our website. It says COVID-19 dashboard and reporting information or reporting. So it's there. You could see it as soon as it's updated, and I will put the date back on there as to when when it's updated. So kind of going through, we do the daily health screening. People do their due diligence. I just want to briefly mention that if you look at the Board of Health guidance in terms of, a question we get a lot is, are we taking temperatures at school? The Board of Health guidance actually recommends that you, in the level we're at now, that you don't take temperatures at school. And so it supports our plan. I'm not saying we're doing that because of that. It supports the plan of, for a variety of reasons of not taking temperatures, but I just wanted to reiterate that. So for students that are coming to school via car, you're going to come to school the same way. Please take note on the building plans. The buildings are not going to be open as early as they were in the past, predominantly about 10 minutes before the school day starts. Just for supervision and congregating of students, we can't have that anymore. But on the bus stop, the bus locations are in Power School or Unified Classroom. If you get in there or you can't find it, call or email the building secretary. They can help you out with that information. And then unless there's an exemption on file, facial coverings need to be worn if you are not going to socially distance at least 6 feet at the bus stop. So if I'm at the bus stop and I'm going to go, we're going to socially distance 6 feet, that's up to parent discretion to how they're going to deal with that at the bus stop. But if you can't do that, my guideline is just wear your mask. You're going to be wearing it, throughout the time period, so just get used to wearing it. When they're on the bus, it'll be no more than 2 to a seat. We'll keep siblings and family members and households together. There will be assigned seating, and on the bus, you have to wear your facial covering. So once I ride the bus, I get to the day and I start the school day. It's not going to be the typical, we're all going to go through the front entrance or these few entrances. At every building, there are designated doors, and there's no waiting. We're going to go to the multipurpose room at the elementary level. We're going to go to our classroom. And so your buildings have a specific plan. Those were sent out via email by the principals, and they're a part of our larger level plan for the Restart program. Instruments, you can drop those off on their specific doors that say, hey, if you play an instrument, here's where you're going to go, especially for the high school and middle school. And then once you enter the building, once you enter the classrooms, elementary level, nearly every classroom has a sink. We're going to have kids wash their hands. At the secondary level, the kids can use the bathroom and wash their hands, or even at the elementary, we have hand sanitizer in all the main areas. We have hand sanitizer as kids go into the classroom. They'll be required to use that hand sanitizer prior to entering the classroom. And as we said, check at the building plans for when you're allowed to enter. So we get to the building, and I need to move through my classes. What does that look like at the preschool and elementary? It's going to be a minimum of 5 feet socially distanced in the classroom. Kids and staff will be wearing masks. They're going to remain in their classrooms for the majority of their day. So I talked about limited mixing of cohorts or groups of students. The exceptions that may include gifted students. Gifted students, we provide services in grades 3 through 5 for mathematics. We are still going to provide that service. That service is in a different classroom, so we still need students to move. So they will possibly mix within the grade level, but that's it. So third grade students would be together. And we talked to our principals yesterday that when we take a look at all of these services, whether it be English language services, Title I services, special education services, band and orchestra, we want to keep the cohort no more than the grade level. If for some reason we can't keep it within the grade level, then we need to talk and problem solve. But they're working through those services. But everything else will be in the classroom. So if I'm at an upper grade level and typically I switch classes, I don't anymore. The teachers switch classes. The special area or encore, art, music, and PE, they will come to the classrooms. It's possible for PE or any of these classes to go outside to socially distance as they walk outside. That's for core or encore. They can do that as weather permits. But they will not be switching classes or movement in the hallway. As we talked about, recess is going to be outside. So again, you're going to have those grade level. Some buildings were able just to keep it by class. Bigger buildings are by grade level. And then they have hallway and traffic patterns throughout the building. If I'm at the middle school or high school, desks will be socially distanced at the minimum of 5 feet. We talked about at the high school where we still need to problem solve. And those are listed on their building plans. Kids will be wearing masks, and they will follow their schedule. So whatever their schedule says, period 1 through 8, they will follow that in the class periods. It's not like it is in Remote 2.0 where I'm going to do half extended one day and half the other. Students will follow their schedule. At the middle school and the high school, the similarity is there's traffic patterns for stairwells, there's traffic patterns for the hallways that are established and will be trained and worked on with the students. When a lot of students at the middle school, they move within their learning community or their pod, and they have clockwise or counterclockwise rotation that they're going to do, where students are going to all socially distance and leave the classroom, and then they're going to walk around in the same pattern and just filter into their next class as they go, so it's going to take a little more time. But that's how they'll work class transitions at the middle school. High school, there will be a double bell or staggered dismissal. So the first bell will dismiss 50% of the kids, give them time to move and get through the hallways, and then the second bell will dismiss the second 50%. So, that is how they will move through their schedule in the classrooms at the middle school and high school. So when it's time to eat at the elementary schools, students need to pre-register. This is just for elementary because food is being just lunch breakfast is grab and go as always. The kids can go and get their breakfast. But if I want to eat lunch from the cafeteria, I need to pre-register. And there's been links shared out. I know Dan has sent out the links. He'll continue to send out the links. By 10 p.m. the night before, I need to pre-register. And then I will either go to the cafeteria and get my lunch bag, or it will be brought to my classroom and it will just be a bagged lunch. And there's hot meals in there or hot food in there as well. But that's how we have to manage it at the elementary level. And it lists there who's walking down and where it's going to be delivered. And there's a more detailed plan, and I'll share these slides with everybody. Everybody will eat in their classrooms. And just as a note, when we're in the blended learning framework, so Remote 2.0, anybody that wanted food, we were able to provide food, and we did it in 2 days. And in person, kids are going to get the food on a daily basis. In a blended learning framework, you're only going to be able to get the meals when you're actually at school. So we will not be able to provide pickups for the time when students are at home during remote learning days. For the middle school and high school, it will be grab and go for breakfast, for lunch. They'll go through the cafeteria line. It will be, protective glass around the food. A food service worker will be the one. If you've been in our middle school and high school cafeterias, it was a pretty cool setup. Kids have different stations. They can go to the sandwich station, salad bar, taco bar, and they would take their own food. Obviously can't do that anymore. So we will have the options that we have available will be made by food service staff. It will be put in a container, given to the student, and then they can go eat. We talked about the middle school of where they would eat depending on the structure. At the high school, they'll be socially distanced in the common, and depending on the lunch period, AUX 2 will be set up for lunch as well for students to go there. I did want to take a kind of little side note and share that breakfast and lunch for all of our students is free up until December 31st. There's the USDA free breakfast and lunch program. So it'll occur through December 31st or until funds run out. So anybody that wants to eat lunch, you don't have to pay for it. The program is paying for it, and you can receive a lunch for free. And we do have the same program available for students that are in the solo program as well, and that's been communicated. They'll be able to get lunch 5 days a week, and they get to pick when their pickup day is and what location, and that's been sent out in emails as well. So our students in the solo program will be able to get lunch there as well. If a student wants a free lunch, elementary has to pre-register to get their lunch just for the logistics of it. A student wants to get their lunch, they just go through the breakfast line, lunch line. They scan their card if they're we only did the cards as Steve's took. Only did the cards at the elementary level, right? So we have cards at the elementary level when we get back and going, but kids will punch in their codes and, just so we can track the lunches, I'm assuming, but they won't have to pay anything.
And then at the end of each month, they're reported to the state, just like our lunches are now. Previous to that, at the end of each month, food service reports the meal counts to OD, and then the following month we get the reimbursement. I'll get back to you on that. I mean, it would go against we wouldn't be able to claim both reimbursement. Well, the funding is not specifically by school, I don't believe. I think it's just the total overall grant for the state. Okay.
So there is no sign up or registration for this prior to, okay.
Just the only sign up is, do you want it at the elementary level? Do you want to eat? And what do you want to eat? And then it'll be ready for you the next day. And it's always 10 p.m. and just, for Mondays, it's Sunday at 10 p.m. So. So time to play for our preschool and elementary school students. So preschool will have recess. Each class will go out at assigned time for play and gross motor time. Elementary schools, there'll be a designated time for each grade level, and there's a recess plan. Again, it's communicated in the building-specific plans that are there. And this is a question that we get a lot. Does my student have to wear a mask when they're outside at recess? And the answer is yes. If you look at the mask, or the state mask order, the exemptions are that students do not have to wear their mask outdoors when they can maintain 6 feet of social distancing. When you take a look at kids at recess, and I used to be an elementary principal, it's very difficult to control that and to be able to ensure that that will happen. So students will need to wear their masks during recess time at the elementary level. So storing my stuff, this is what do I do? Are we going to be able to use lockers? So the overarching answer is no, we are not going to have lockers. Because of close proximity, because of having that close proximity to get into the cubbies or the coat rooms, or at some of the schools like Kinsner has lockers, Moraski has lockers, some of the other schools don't. It's more the cubbies. So they'll be able to use, they'll socially distance and separate as they go to put their stuff away, but book bags and lunches will be kept by the student desks. At the middle school and high school, they're not going to use lockers at this time, nor will they use lockers for PE. They'll have the backpack, and we have been working at the secondary level, as I said earlier today, How do we reduce the number of books because we're using online resources? So the goal is that students will not have to carry every book. Teachers will be able to say, these books can stay at home, these books need to come to school because we're going to use our ebook or online resources that are available. Once we move closer to winter, we're going to have to deal with even though some of our middle school and high school students seem to always wear a pair of shorts and a hoodie, or the winter coats are not a thing, but we do want to offer that opportunity for students that need some storage for coats and things of that nature once we get to the winter weather. So the middle school and high school will be working on a plan for how they can space those based on student need or socially distance them as they go to their locker. So we get through our day, we go home. Preschool will be socially distanced as they exit. The aides will coordinate getting students to the parent cars or bus riders. Elementary students, if you know the elementary process, it was we'd send walkers and pickups, then we'd send the first few waves of buses, and then everybody would go to a multi-purpose room and wait. So obviously that can't happen. All of the kids are going to remain in their classrooms. There'll be designated doors. Students will exit for pickup or to board their bus, and there's specific arrival and dismissal plans which are linked there. The middle school will do a staggered start by grade level. Parents picking up their students will be dismissed no earlier than 3:05 p.m. So what we are going to do is say, okay, 6th grade students, it's time for you to board your bus. The buses will be there. They will socially distance as they get on the bus. They will find their seat on the bus. And then once we accomplish that, then we will go to the 7th grade. The idea being, if you've been to the middle school kids love to congregate. They love to hang out together. And if we don't get them on the bus, that's going to happen. So we figured, by the recommendation of the middle school team, having students walk past kids on the bus with their masks on is a better scenario than all kids being out there together waiting to get on the bus and going single file based on the order of their seats. And the high school will run a rolling dismissal at the end of the school day, again, dismissing in waves. So that kind of gives an overall picture of what a school day is going to look like for our students. The other restart guide slides that I have that follow, we did those in the community conversations. We've kind of talked about those throughout. Are there any specific questions about the Students' Day or maybe things that we talked about related to the restart guide or COVID tracing or communication that you'd like us or Jenny to provide a little more context on?
Is there an isolation room in each of the buildings that's separated from the nurses' station?
Yes. Yes, I know our nurses started back yesterday, and Crystal was going through everything with them these last couple of days and tomorrow. But there is room that, if they were suspected to have COVID, that they would go to that room, away from maybe a student that's coming to get their, insulin shot for the day or whatever.
Thank you.
I was asked a question that I didn't have the answer to, so I thought I'd just ask real quick here. Water bottles. Are students going to be allowed to be able to bring water bottles with them to school so that they know that, okay, I filled this up, it's mine, and they can carry it in their bag with them?
So yes, as a reference, as we said, these are guides, right? So I know there's a lot of information. So if we look at the parent and student procedural updates, students' water fountains will be closed at this time, right here at the bottom. Bottle filling stations will remain open, and kids continue to bring bottles from home. So there's no change to the bringing water from home or, a water bottle or any of that. The only difference is there's no water fountains. Some of our buildings have the bottle filling stations. Those will still be open. We just ask that kids are reasonable with it. Obviously, when you take a drink of water, your mask has to go down. You can do that quickly. And so we just ask people to be responsible with that, but they can bring water and have that at their desk like they would normally.
For the record, I thought you said watermelons, and I was very confused.
Those are welcome too.
You'll rue that. You're going to rue that.
It's in pieces. In pieces.
Cameron, just a question. The restart guide was very comprehensive, had a lot of information. And I'm glad we reinforced that if you have questions, call your principal, call your teacher, et cetera, and you have those relationships. If a parent just says, I have 2 kids, I just need to know where I'm supposed to send them on Monday, is there an easy way for them to do that?
Well, what I would say is, the first thing is, please make sure you're getting emails from us. You know, this has been a challenge, and the challenge that we're finding now, so let me answer your question before I go on my public service announcement. The answer is, if you're getting emails, the principals are sending it out in their weekly updates, and they've sent it out all the time. So make sure, I know we're inundated with communication, and it can be very overwhelming all the time for everybody. But check that principal update, you know. No offense, Dan, but skip the Mustang moments for a few weeks. Focus on your building principal updates. And that's where you can get, is my student in a green, white day? You know, which days are those? All of that can be there. And we've tried to do quick links on our Restart website. You know, green, white day calendar. You don't need to go through web pages. You just click on it, and there's the schedule. So the building website, but the principal communications is where a lot of this information is going to be at. My public service announcement is we have now moved from people not getting the email because they're not signed up or they've unsubscribed. Predominantly, it is a Gmail issue that we're having. So if your personal account is a Gmail issue, and this is not just a Strongsville issue, I have a personal Gmail account, and from my kids' school, everything goes to spam. So that's why, not to bombard you with phone calls, but that's why we've started doing the phone calls. Because Gmail, for some reason, we have a purchase program that we use that's supposed to avoid this, but it's sending it to your spam, your trash, or your promotions folder. So please check there before you call, and we can figure that out for you. But all of the communications I sent out are also put on the website to avoid that fact. So click on Parent Communications. Dan does a nice job of saying, here's the date, here's some highlights of what we're talked about, and you can access that as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For our Solo 2.0 students, I was asked when they would find out who their Strongsville teacher is. And I see you referenced that they would receive an email no later than next Friday, the 25th. So what will those students be required to do then Monday through Friday if they don't hear from their teacher before Friday?
So they will, and then this was put out, it was put out on Monday. It will be reiterated in Aaron's email, but it depends. So let me go through the pathway. If I'm currently in Solo, I continue with Solo. If I am new to Solo, I don't actually start Solo until September 28th. So that's where we talked about, I'm going to stay with if I'm currently Remote 2.0, I'm going to stick with my class. I'm going to do that work. I'm going to turn in that work. So I'm still a part of Remote 2.0 until September 25th. So that's what I'm going to do next week, is I am going to continue to do Remote 2.0. But when some kids go to the building for those 2 days, I'm just going to stay home and do my asynchronous work and turn it in. And then on the 28th, we'll be ready to go with your solo teacher. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, I'm sorry, just for clarification, when you say remain with 2.0, even though they would be with a green group or a white group, and those groups are in person, how does that look for that student?
So that student would, thank you for clarifying, probably need to stick with simpler, or not mixed terminologies. But the student would stay at home and do asynchronous work. So during that week, teachers are going to be posting, because every day there's going to be a group of students at home, right? So students just need to go into the Google Classroom, and whatever is posted for Monday, do the Monday work, submit it like you would. But if I'm in the white day group and I'm supposed to go Tuesday, I don't go to school. I just look at what's posted on the Google Classroom for Tuesday, complete it, submit it. I'm going to do that for Monday through Friday. And then on the 28th, I'm going to be ready. By Friday, I'll know who my teacher is. I'll have access to his or her Google Classroom, and then I'll be ready to go. And that teacher it'll be very similar. I'm going to log on to that teacher's Google Classroom now. And do the asynchronous work, and then the teacher is going to, communicate the schedule. I did want to clarify for the public comments, that is 30 minutes of instruction. It's not check-in. It's what we've talked about with our teachers is, they've got to look at, they're teaching the 4 cores. So during that time, they're going to set a schedule where it's not going to be math 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and I don't know if that was what you were referring to, but there'll be 30 minutes of instruction, and they will work with the students to determine, maybe 2 days this week is going to be math, a day will be language arts, a day will be science, a day will be social studies, whatever it may be, but those will be, in addition to the videos, live instruction components that will be there.
Any other questions?
So with that, Mr. Breckner, if you're still awake or around, you're up with business services.
Good evening, everyone. A couple items in the business services section. The first one is bus routes and stops. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that all bus routes and bus stops presented by the Transportation Department for the 2020-21 school year be approved, and that the operations manager and the supervisor of transportation be authorized to adjust the routes and stops as necessary during the school year. And the second item are some gifts that were given to the district. St. Joseph's Catholic Church donated Target gift cards totaling $300 to Whitney Elementary School to be used to purchase school supplies for students in need. The Edelman family donated 50 homemade masks with an estimated value of $200 to Sarar Elementary School for students in need. And the Kiwanis Club of Strongsville donated $150 to Sarar Elementary School for the purchase of fidget bags.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Aaron Green, our Director of Curriculum.
Steve? What's a fidget? I just got to ask, what's a fidget bag?
It is a donation from the Kiwanis Club of Strongsville to Sarar Elementary School. I do not know.
A fidget bag are little manipulatives. You could think of like a stress ball, little Play-Doh spinners, things of that nature that for sensory needs or attention. There's actually some really great variety that helps students to focus, to pay attention to. So that's what it's used for.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Steve's answer was better, but all right, Aaron, now you're up.
All right, thanks. Tonight I have 3 items for you under curriculum. First one is in Exhibit D. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Ed enters into an interdistrict service area contract with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for the 2021 school year. Item 2 can be found in Exhibit E, and this is pass-through portion that George referenced earlier. It's a service agreement with PSI Affiliates Incorporated. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with PSI Affiliates Incorporated, PSI Associates Incorporated, in the amount of $5,365.28. This is for a part-time Title I instructor for St. Albert the Great School under the Title I funding. It's administered to approved non-public schools by local districts. And the third item is a speech-language pathology student-teacher placement. Be it resolved upon the recommendation, the following student-teacher shall be placed, and this teacher will be placed at Sarar Elementary from September 18th through December 4th, and she is a student at Baldwin-Wallace University. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Aaron.
What's a fidget bag? Well, before you run away, we all know you've been putting in a lot of hours, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
We do not have a report for student service this month, so next up is Assistant Superintendent Jenny Pelko with the Human Resource Report. Jenny?
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. Under Human Resources, I have the following items for your consideration this evening. Under E1, the abolishment of a non-certificated staff. Under E2, resignation of non-certificated supplemental. Under E3, appointments for certificated substitutes and non-certificated substitutes, home instruction tutors, and testing consultants. Under E4, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under E5, changes in status for non-certificated employees. Under E6, educational upgrades for our certificated staff. Under E7, a medical leave for certificated staff, medical leaves for non-certificated staff. Under E8, an unpaid leave for non-certificated staff. And in the addendum, under E9, we have our security services provided by our Strongsville City Police Department. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to work with the Strongsville City Police Department to provide security services for the 2020-2021 school year to the middle school building and high school building. Officers to be paid at the rate of $35 per hour by timesheet as verified by the building administrator and the Strongsville City Police Department. And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Hearing none, I just want to highlight to the community the human resources, the security services. Many of us, if not all of us, are aware of the financial challenges that the city is facing, but at the same time, making sure we have those SROs at our school is important. So for now, the school district will inherit the burden of the cost, but I did want to assure the public that those SRO officers will still be here.
Under technology, we have no specific items for vote, but I am going to ask Dave to come up and share just a brief update on kind of the grants, hotspots, and Chromebooks that we talked about last time.
Hello. Just like Cameron said, give you a couple updates. As mentioned in today's community conversation, that we have a backup plan for our freshmen in the Chromebook situation. It's involving a little bit of activities from all the elementary schools and our middle school as well, that we're going to pull some resources to make sure that we have the devices that our students need that use them the most. Along with that, we do have, I'm working with AT&T right now on the hotspot situation. I'm getting a quote and getting some of the contracts finalized for us for the hotspots. And then with the connectivity grant, they changed the rules, or I don't want to say they changed the rules, but they're allowing schools who did not get their full amount to revise their submission. So we're going to revise our submission and change what we're asking for, just in the point that since we asked for more than what we were given, we're going to change the numbers of like the bus Wi-Fi routers. Like instead of asking for 10, we're going to say that we could possibly purchase 5, 6, or 7, depending on how the quotes come back. So we are allowed to submit for that, and the way that it has been conveyed to us that with those revisions, once they're accepted, we still get the original amount we were provided with. So it won't change the overall value of the grant.
Any questions for Dave?
Dave, on the grants that we're receiving, the money that is there has to be specifically used for, obviously technology, but for this particular hotspot piece. It can't be used for some other technology piece within the district, correct?
Correct. There was 3 categories they had. It was providing home internet to students. So that's like if you paid for a school district, or the school district paid for a family to have internet in their house. Like they took the contract over from like Spectrum or WOW and paid for them individually. You had hotspots and cellular-enabled devices. That would be our the hotspots that we're getting through, that we're working with AT&T for. The other category was a mobile public hotspots. That is for some districts putting Wi-Fi routers on buses or in vans and driving them to locations and letting them sit while students congregate around them, socially distanced, and work. And then also public Wi-Fi, which is what we're doing at the elementary schools, with putting the Wi-Fi routers externally on the building so that the people outside of the building can get our service as well.
Thank you, Dave, and that concludes my report.
Next on our agenda is report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell.
There are a couple of changes upcoming for Polaris Career Center, and conveniently they align with our time schedule. So Monday, September 28th, they will be resuming their normal timing. Juniors will begin their classes at 7:50 a.m., seniors at 11:30 a.m., and there'll be the 3-hour time block. Transportation is aware of these changes, so if your child has been receiving transportation services, they will make the adjustments to make sure your child gets there on time. The other thing to note is that Polaris Career Center has a COVID dashboard that looks very similar to the one that we put out. So if you're curious about what's going on at Polaris, you can check out their website and it's available to you. I checked this afternoon. At that point, everything was 0. And the other thing of note is there's a really excellent link there. If you're curious about any of the procedures for utilizing traffic flow, how to exit and enter classrooms, those videos are all available to you on the website. That concludes my report.
Board liaison reports. Who's doing city council today?
That'll be me. City Council had their regular meeting after being off in August on Tuesday, September 8th. Mr. Short reported on Southwest General Health System. He reported that through September 1st, they conducted 6,200 COVID tests, having 525 positive cases total. It's a slightly higher percentage than the county, and that's because of the lack of testing. They were very careful who they tested, so they had a higher positive percentage. Mr. DeMio reported on buildings and finance. Building permit requests are up in Strongsville, meaning there's a lot of remodeling and additions going on. The unemployment rate in Strongsville is under 9%. In Cuyahoga County, it's at 13%, and in the U.S., it's about 10%, so we're under, and that's positive for Strongsville. At our rec center, senior center, the senior center will be reopening on September 21st. It will be closing at 5 p.m., and there will be no Sunday hours. They're trying to slowly get our seniors back out and active again. Mayor Persiak reported that Breakfast on the Bridge is canceled this year for the City Club, as well as the day at the chalet. Because of social distancing mandates, they don't feel like they can do these safely. And the Chamber of Commerce Scholarship Dance has been postponed. There is not a date yet picked for that. But never fear, the Sunday before Christmas, the square will still be lit up with Christmas lights. They're just not sure how that is going to look as well with, inviting the public out. If you need to visit the city offices, they are now going to be back open 5 days a week, and you can check their website for hours. And that concludes my reports.
Strongsville Education Foundation? You want to take that, Laura?
They did not meet.
They did not have a meeting.
Excellent report.
And that concludes that one.
PTA Council.
I talked to the PTA president, and there was nothing to report. Do you want me to do legislation?
Let's finish liaisons.
Okay.
Do you want to hit student achievement, Seth?
Sure. We had something very special to celebrate. We have 6 National Merit semifinalists within Strongsville. Out of 1.5 million students annually are normally in this, and less than 1% actually become semifinalists. So something we should be very proud of for our students. There's 6 of them again. It's Matthew Cornelius, Nicholas, I apologize, I think it's Cyranak, Charles Lynn, Alexandru Sadeclary, Verdan Shah, and Kevin Whitbread are the 6 semifinalists from Strongsville. So congratulations to them and their families. Should be very proud of that, and we're very proud of you.
And I think that's your first student achievement report.
It is. I was a little nervous.
Well, I just want to say, I think that's wonderful that we have 6 students in our district, and that's an incredible achievement. So I'm pleased to hear that. Board committee reports. Finance committee?
We are TBD.
We didn't.
We didn't meet.
I have a feeling that a pattern is forming. Policy committee, I'll take that. Our next meeting is to be announced. Facilities committee, we do have an announcement. We would like to announce the next meeting date.
Our next meeting is September 24th here at the administrative offices at 6:30 p.m.
And Business Advisory Council,
TBDA.
to be announced. Consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items appearing in this agenda are adopted in one single motion unless a member of the board or superintendent requests otherwise. We do have 2 removals And those removals are from the treasurer's report, B, the permanent appropriation, and E, the student activity program budgets. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Any other requests for removals or suspensions? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? You can take the roll, George.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes, and the motion carries. Superintendent's timely information.
Well, I think what is extremely timely is Ms. Salee's report on legislation of something that was just passed, so
Oh, did I skip it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Go ahead.
I thought that was nicely stated. It was a nice transition. We didn't even have to go down that route.
No problem, right? All right, there was an act, by the General Assembly of Ohio, House Bill 606, concerning liability to the school district due to COVID. I know a lot of parents were asking about that. No civil action for damages for injury, death, or loss to person or property shall be brought against any person that would, mean any school, for-profit or non-profit entity, government entity, religious entity, if the cause of action on which the civil action is based on a number of viruses, but that would include COVID. And let's see, and that's due just if there was reckless, if it was due to recklessness, of course, there could be an action brought, but we've done everything we could as a district to mitigate any exposure or issues that were resolved. That's not to say nothing could happen, but Strongsville has done their part to try to mitigate anything. And then, there is a legislation to extend the flexibility and relief measures previously afforded to the school districts in the 2019 to 2020 school year. Because of COVID, there was some exemptions, I guess, given to the schools. One of the exemptions was for, and some of them have been extended, and examples are an exemption from the requirement to administer state assessments, that's state assessments. As of now, there are no exemptions to federal assessments, correct? And then I'll mention a couple others, and the authorization for districts to grant high school diplomas up to September 30th, 2021. An extension of prohibition on deducting state funding from districts if they did not administer assessments to one or more students. And there's a few others, but FYI, I don't want to spend too much time on all of those. And that concludes my report.
And I apologize. You tried to remind me, and I disregarded it entirely, but I appreciate the kind attempt to get us back on track, Cameron.
So just as a reminder for tomorrow, even though our football team is away, there are still fundraisers that you can participate in. So it's a little small there, but so Fridays, if you go to these locations during the times that are listed, they donate a portion of the proceeds back to our athletic department. So Raising Cane's, Dairy Queen, Gina's Pizza, Peace, Love, and Little Donuts, Roebuck's, Five Guys, and Chick-fil-A. So if you're planning on going to get some food tomorrow, head to those places.
Please clarify that that's going back to our music boosters.
Oh, music boosters, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Music boosters. I just wanted to make Mr. Miko feel better about his mistake earlier, so.
Softball.
Music boosters, yeah, so we're not doing concessions, so this goes to the music boosters. Thank you, Laura, for reminding me. So go out and support those and support your music boosters. Obviously, as George said in his budget, our athletic program, our music program, financially, this is very difficult the significant amount of funds from ticket sales, significant amount of funds from concessions. So any bit we can do to help, please go ahead and help these great programs. That's it for me, Mr. Miko.
Okay, Board of Education, other. The first one we have is to set the date for our special meeting. And is everyone available next Thursday?
Sherry and I will be here at 6:30 for the Facilities Committee meeting.
Well,
so.
dead conflict. Okay. So,
Do we want to do a morning meeting, or do we want to look at evening?
I would have a lot of difficulty with a morning meeting, so I'd like to keep it in the evening. And once again, George, our deadline is the end of the month?
Yeah, by September 30th.
Okay. Tuesday, the 29th? And do we want to move it up to 6:30? Does that sound good? Tuesday, the 29th at 6:30, and the purpose will be the finance issues that we have to do, and then a COVID update or a update on school.
Just a question, Rich, we're also to meet that Thursday, is that what we want to do?
October.
Thursday's October 1st.
So,
Oh, that's a good point.
do we want to try for the 22nd, does that help, or that's the worst week?
We are very busy people.
Yes, we are.
So unless there, I think we'll just keep going round and round, so as long as everyone's available that Tuesday, we'll just meet twice that week. And to be honest with you, that'll give everyone plenty of time that if they need questions answered from George, or just need the time to go through the finance material, they have it. Okay,
Okay.
so once again, it is September, what was the date?
29th.
29th at 6:30 PM. Thank you very much. Any others?
I just want to mention real quick that there's a Strongsville Trike and Bike. It's a virtual, get out and ride your bike. It benefits fellow Sano, and they're raising funds for pediatric cancer research. You can register online at donate@give.ccf.org, and you must register by September 20th.
And then my only other is, I did notice in the governor's update today, the school information was released, and we'll need to follow up on that, because I looked at Cuyahoga County, and there were 2 cases, and Strongsville wasn't one of them. So I think we just need to understand the reporting. I know it was for that, it's for a week lag, but it's also a positive, at least in Cuyahoga County, there were not very many cases reported of infections or quarantines. So I think that's good news. In addition to that, as Cameron pointed out, we were orange again. And I noticed that the per 100,000 numbers have gone from 76 to 83 to 70 to 59. And if that trend continues and we get below 50, it is distinctly possible that we will be yellow next week. So those are all good signs for us to continue to manage and balance, and ultimately, if we can do it safely, and bring not just the elementary students back, but the middle school and the high school. Meeting notification, we already did the one. We have a work session on October 1st, 7 PM in this building, and then we have another Board of Education meeting Thursday, October 22nd, 7 PM in this building. We do have need for executive session to prepare for negotiations and to discuss the employment of a employee or public official. Did I get that right? Any other topics? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? you take the roll.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Salee? Mr. Miko?
Yes, the motion carries. We will go into executive session at 9:55. We have no expectation of business afterwards. I want to thank everyone for their attention. Good luck and continue to do well in school, and we will see you next time. Thank you.